Hello, everybody. Welcome to the second episode of the Monthly Game Challenge podcast. We still didn't have a name for the show by our second episode, and this is actually the third recording of this episode. The first recording was not very good. We scrapped it because we were kind of tired and just not in good moods. It was right in the middle of holiday stuff, so I think we were both pretty beat down. The second recording we did, our buddy Josh stopped by, and we just turned that into a year-end wrap-up. And then this recording happened, and we decided to tack on the end a little year-end recap and what we are hoping for next year. It gets a little bit long, and we certainly go off on a bunch of tangents. And I think it's because we had already talked about these games twice before, and we kind of referenced the previous episode. So it's a little bit long. Hang in there. The third episode is coming soon. We do have a name for it, so it'll have a proper intro. Hopefully, we don't fuck that one up. So, enjoy!
Like, this is just going, like, off the rails. Maximo. I could see where that was going, and I'm like, I'm going to cut this off right now. This is going to be really long and stupid and not funny. Which is the name of our podcast. Really long and stupid and not funny.
Yeah. What was the thing you said yesterday? Where you're like, what separates us from popular people is they have a really good catchphrase and a name. I go, well, I think you nailed the name part right away. So, you, Maximo.
Oh, right.
We pull off, like, the podcast is like Snake Way. And every so often, we veer off and start falling into hell. Heffel. And then every so often, we get back up and then stop and slide off again.
We can't make DBZ references, or else we're just going to reference Dragon Ball Z impressions all the time. See you in Heffel. Anyway, Maximo. Fuck you. You're throwing me off by looking at me. Maximo is a game that, when I first played it, well, first of all, I should say that it was my game for the month of December, but I only really played it during the very end of December because I was busy with other things. And when I first played Maximo, I hated it. And at first I thought it's because I hated the game, but now that time has passed and I can look back on it, I can see that I was really, we'll call it tired for a lot of the end of December, and Maximo just made me more tired. And now that I've moved on from it, I realize I see the game in a whole new light, and I understand it better. And I'm really glad we're re-recording this because I didn't really give Maximo a fair shake last time. I mean, I still said it was a good game. So now this will be my true opinion of Maximo. And as Maximo is a good game, it might even be a great game. I didn't enjoy playing it, and my main problem with the game is that I found a lot of it tedious, and I found a lot of it cheap. And originally, on our first recording of this podcast, I compared it to Dark Souls 2, where I just felt like the game thought old Super Ghouls and Ghost type games, you died a lot. And so we have to have you die a lot in this game. And so we're going to put in lots of cheap stuff. We're going to have the camera angles suck. We're going to have the platforming be either stupidly difficult or sometimes, I don't know, obviously it's not intentional, but sometimes when you land on a platform, you catch the texture wrong, you slide off. Basically, my original takeaway from that is that it was a cheap game that anyone can pick up and play and probably enjoy, but there's enough of the game working against you that I couldn't really fully enjoy it. And that's not quite the same stance I have today. Last time I commented that I really enjoyed playing Maximo when I had all my buffs, when I had all my items, when I had, 4 ranks of armor, when I had a whole bunch of power-ups and I was just slaying through the game. I felt like the game was trying to play me, and I was outsmarting it when I was just steamrolling through these levels, especially on my second playthrough. And now I understand that the reason they put the cheap stuff in there is to curtail that, which sounds obvious at first. I mean, no game wants to just be stupidly easy unless it's like a Kirby game or something. But it makes sense, because I'm guessing if I played through the entire game from the beginning and it was fall asleep easy, then I would have said it's a good game, and I wouldn't have got mad at it. I would have just been like, it's kind of boring though, and it would be pretty boring if you have all your power-ups throughout the entire game. On my second playthrough, when I knew how to really play the game, I had all my power-ups much longer, and I knew how to platform better and stuff, and I still died in a cheap way occasionally. But I understand why those little speed bumps are in there. That's essentially what they are. Death is a speed bump in this game. You could argue that's how it is for any game, but a lot of games, when you die, you don't always lose your power. Like Contra, you go back to your regular gun. You lose the spread gun or whatever you're using. And that's kind of like the same vein in this. And when we did this podcast the first time, I likened Maximo to like an old side-scrolling shooter game. And again, I wasn't really aware at the time, even though I made that comparison, of how accurate it was. Because a side-scrolling shooter game, if you play it and you've all your power-ups, and you just have enemies coming at you, and you just sit there holding the fire button and moving your ship up and down, that'd be boring. And so I still think that Maximo has a lot of tedious, cheap stuff in it, but it might actually make the experience better. It's just not a game for me.
Yeah, some of the death stuff, when you look at the way it's designed, they try to use the gravestones and the firefly collecting in order to it's a more organic difficulty thing, where if you don't want to deal with the fireflies, then don't go into that area that has 3 tombstones. You don't need to worry about it. Or don't save the radiant shield thing that draws in power-ups. You can use something else. Because the game feels... They give you a certain amount of protected things even if you die. And there feels like there's a lot of necessary things. The double swing feels almost necessary. The throwing shield feels necessary. The radiant magnetism feels like it's necessary. But yeah, I mean, I played recently a little bit. I just got a little bit bored, and I didn't collect fireflies. I started to, and I was like, yeah, fuck it, I don't really care. And I realized how I didn't need to use my keys on certain doors because I could just save them for a chest later, or I could... So I had an easier time as long as I wasn't dying, because I wasn't worrying about a certain pickup. I only got coins. I didn't worry about going off the beaten path and doing other things. So they use it more like an organic kind of difficulty setting. Depending on how much you need the fireflies, you need to do more.
I guess I should give you some audio to use to splice in to an earlier segment. Maximo is a third-person action platformer made by Capcom that's kind of the spiritual successor, the remake, the reimagining of the old Super Ghouls and Ghost games. It features kind of the same characters. It features the same music.
Yeah, it's pretty similar. I mean, it's not.
Do you need me to repeat my audio about the game from the other one?
No. There's not much to say about Maximo. It's just a very...
Maximo's a very video game, which I appreciate.
It's a retro throwback when we were only one generation removed from the throwback.
Right.
It also... And the camera stuff is it's a carryover from the PS1, because it was an early PS2 title. And that always kind of happens is whenever you have that transition, the next generation carries over bad flaws from the previous generation that can be fixed. They just haven't figured it out yet. So they didn't have good camera logic. They didn't have good camera controls, which makes you really appreciate some of those Nintendo games that have great camera logic. I think it's very good. It's just there are shortcomings because it is a very Super Nintendo platformer, but instead on the PS2.
I think it was Cliff Blazinski, and correct me if I'm wrong, but he was the one that talked about how in something like UT or Quake, if both sides have equal power-ups and equal weapons and everything's equal, it'd be kind of boring. And you need that element of randomness, you need that quad damage, you need that vulnerability to kind of like make a game more interesting.
And you are talking about Cliffy B, yeah.
I disagree with that. I think that when it comes to pure competition, both sides should be equal. I think it should come down solely to player skill. And so that's why I prefer replaying something like Dark Souls. Whereas, yeah, there's a few wonky things in Dark Souls, but for the most part, once you master that game, you can sail through it as long as you're not overconfident. Whereas with Maximo, I feel like even if I, spent a month playing that game, I couldn't replay it with no deaths. I'd either miss a platform by like catching the edge of it, or just something would happen. I'd get zerged by enemies.
I don't know.
I'd get trapped in a corner.
Because I've not only played, not perfect runs, but near perfect runs. And I've seen people play perfect runs. Whenever you get to that platform that should be an easy jump, you have to stop for a second. Because the camera tends to be a little too low to Maximo. It doesn't rise up when you go near ledges, so you can misjudge. The depth perception of the game is awful.
Well, I mentioned in the previous podcast how often you have to spam L1 to reset the camera. I think the first thing that really made me upset about Maximo, because I went into it, like Quest 64, I went into it expecting to have fun, it'd be a good game, and again, it is a good game, but I thought it'd be an enjoyable time, and I didn't enjoy either of my playthroughs through Maximo. The first thing that bothered me about Maximo is in the first world, one of the first levels, the ground falls away in the lava at one point, and it falls away. I don't know how it's scripted. I'm not like a game design guy, but I was walking. There's no sprint in the game. There's just like one speed. I was walking, and the ground falls away. And even trying to double jump back to safety, it was too low. It happened too fast, and I fell into lava. And it just felt like a really cheap death. And of course, next time I knew it, but they'd already taken my fire enchant from me. They'd taken my silver shield.
I think I know what you're talking about. I didn't have that problem. Like, it disappeared far before I got to it. Because there was other things as, like, a blocker. It's kind of like the Drake.
Well, there were items nearby to pick up. But I didn't go for those. I wanted to get... there was, like, a checkpoint nearby or something. And I kind of, like, overstepped my boundary. And that's one of those things that's kind of tough to gauge in a game. I'm not trying to fault them for it. But a lot of games have that platformer thing where the blocks are falling as you step on them, and I would say that most games that do that, it's never an issue. If you just hold forward, you're going to get to the end before then. And then you have some games that they make it too difficult, and you basically have to mash jump, or you have to know the layout before you get there.
Maximo has some pretty good platforming segments where the ground is falling, and as it's falling you have to jump up like a ladder pretty much into safety. Those are pretty good. But then it also has, in the same area, the land that falls, and it's only one or two platforms, but you cannot see where you're supposed to jump to safety. And it's right next to each other. There's a part where there's a ledge along the canyon, and you run to it, and as you run to it, you see it start to fall. So you know, okay, I gotta get the fuck off. If you want to keep getting the coins, you have to jump on the falling platforms. And then on the other side, you think, well, this is also going to be a trap. And you step on it, and now the camera is not pointing where you need it to be in order to jump to safety, and you can fall off that little ravine.
I don't want to sound like I'm giving Maximo too much praise. There's still things about it that I don't understand how they got through playtesting. The aforementioned level with the spinning pirate ship and the whirlpool, that is just extra. There's nothing you can do. No matter what your skill is, you still have to wait for the ship to turn around slowly so you can jump to it.
Yeah, that's frustrating stuff.
There's one level that has tar pits. And if you jump in the tar pits, your character can't jump. You have to walk to dry area. And that could be however far away, and you have enemies attacking you. And it's just... I get what... It's one of those things like Mecha Gamezilla said, where when he was playing Antichamber, he's like, I get what they're doing, I'm just not a big fan of it. Like, there was items pick up in the tar, so I jumped into it, and now... there was no danger. I already killed most of the enemies. I just had to walk back to dry land. It's like, alright. And it's just 5 minutes of me walking to where I have to get back to.
If I remember correctly, some of those parts were a little too long. I know what they're going for. It's the same thing as the Blight Town, like.
Right.
But if I remember correctly, that was my big problem with the swamp level, is stuff like that was just agitating.
I actually like the swamp level. I was kind of sad to leave it when I got the snow world. I was like, this doesn't seem too bad. Then you have the pirates you have to kill a certain way, and you get the yetis that attack you. And it's just like...
I think the swamp level is my least favorite. The Great Dank.
You get the pirates that are in the ice cubes that you can like kill with a heavy attack, and aiming your heavy thrust at Maximo is a chore because you don't have any control over the camera.
See, I never had that problem.
Maybe I just need to get good.
I think you might. I never had that issue. In our now dead recording of the podcast, I mentioned how I first found this game. I went to Hollywood Video or Blockbuster or something, and picked up Final Fantasy X, and I bought Final Fantasy X, and I bought Maximo just out of nowhere. I think I also rented Princess Mononoke in the same day. And End of Evangelion. It was a weird time. And got home, played a little bit of Maximo, really liked it, ended up just playing a lot. My grandma used to play a lot of these games with me. She played a lot of really hard games. She loved Ghosts and Goblins. She loved Toe Jam and Earl. She loved Maximo. And she was utter crap at it. But she tried over and over and would get pretty far considering. And this... So I played this game a lot over the years. And the one story I told on the last podcast, which is now gone, is how we first met.
Are we not going to salvage any of that podcast and splice it in this one?
The audio kind of came out fucked up.
So do I have to like retell stuff about Maximo? And like,
well, what else do you have to say?
It's done.
I mean, the game is fairly simple. It's
I should say there's...
Did you play Super Nintendo games? Yes. Now it's 3D. That's basically... This game would be more fun if it was a Castlevania game, I think.
It's going to be more fun if it wasn't 3D.
Well, and it's a more fair Ghost and Goblins.
Exactly. You know what one thought I had pop in my head while playing Maximo, and you're probably going to hate me for and say that's stupid. I think that there shouldn't be any insta-deaths in this game.
Yeah, that's pretty dumb. You're dumb. I do think that Shantae has a really good way of dealing with insta-deaths. And that's, you know very fiercely that the area you're going near is death. This game does it fairly well, but it's a little bit harder to gauge where you're jumping. That's my problem.
Well, Shantae is also a 2D good platformer.
Well, the new one has the criticism that it's got platforms that are 3D. And the criticism when you take a 2D, or you have the pseudo 3D, is as you move, the platforms often don't have a defined area because they move in 3 dimensions. So sometimes it's hard to gauge the jump in these new 2.5D.
People gotta stop messing with platformers. There's very few like pure gaming genres that's like we've mastered them. We know what to do with these. No one during the design of Super Meat Boy was sitting there going, you know what would be great? Stereoscopic 3D platforming. It's like, no, just keep it normal.
Well, something like Super Meat Boy has to have hard lines so you know where you're jumping. But when you play like DuckTales, as you walk, the environments are 3D, so that platform, the perspective on it shifts a little bit. And if it was pinpoint difficult platforming, it would be a nightmare. Typically, the platforming a little bit easier, so it's not that big of a deal. But if you're limited by how difficult your game can be whenever you make it harder to judge the depth at which you need to jump. And that's a lot of problem these 3D games have. Conker's has this problem, where when you jump on ledges, you don't always hit like a solid edge. Sometimes your collision will slide you off a little bit.
I guess my biggest problem is that I find a game like Banjo-Kazooie, like I never have a problem platforming in that game, and there are some hard platforming segments. Whereas and that game, I wouldn't say the camera control is bad, but you don't have a second analog stick, and Maximo's the same way. And Maximo, it's like they put platforms there to like, we're gonna try and fuck you up. Whereas Banjo-Kazooie, that never seems to be their goal, isn't to make you fail. And I already talked about this, how you have to fail sometimes in Maximo for it to be interesting.
See, I never felt like any of them were intentionally made to like mess with you.
One of the ice levels, like you start out and it's like you have very small platforms over an insta-death pit, and you have to jump to this pirate ship, and it's like right away it's like, okay, so what if I completely trounce the last level, and I have a ton of this stuff, and I have to try and gauge these jumps to dry land, and I personally I'm not a fan of that. I don't want to say they're trying to make you die, but at the same time,
I never felt like it was like that. My only criticism of the platforming is the collision on edges can be wonky, and the camera does not react well. You don't have
one thing I want to bring about Maximo's platforming is the camera does change sometime mid jump.
Yeah, but
sometimes to your detriment.
That's never really injured me. My problem was always deciding whether or not the distance is correct and being able to jump at that angle. Like you have that area that sinks down in the lava, and there's like a little secret area down there, and as you're jumping down it's hard to kind of see below you, and whenever you have to jump onto the one platform you think, well, it looks like it's close, but it also doesn't look like I can jump with one jump. You can't, there's not enough shadows, there's not enough whatever to judge the depth properly, and the camera never pans up when you go near a jump in order to make it more visible. It just needs like another month of really good camera logic, and
I think, are we at a point now where platformers on their own are obsolete, and not to just like supplement the rest of a game? Like, would you play Shovel Knight if there was no combat and it was just platforming? Because that game was great platforming.
There is a lot of games that are coming out now that are just platformers.
Like VVVVV.
No, because that's got a gimmick to it.
Oh,
I
okay.
mean, like an honest Super Nintendo platformer that somebody just was like, I'm just gonna make it fun and enjoyable.
Like, I don't want to praise Super Meat Boy too much, even though I like that game a great deal and think it is great. But that game is just platforming, and if your game is just platforming and it's any easier than that, it's almost, I don't want to say boring, but you need more substance to it.
But I've played a lot of Super Nintendo platformers, and a lot of them are very fun and very basic. They're just jumping on stuff. Congo's Caper is like, I love Congo's Caper. And you couldn't do that game nowadays, or people would think it's a dumb baby game, or it's a cheap $3 game that nobody should spend money on. And unless you do Super Meat Boy, where it's not a traditional platformer, it's a hardcore pinpoint precision platformer that, just like Dark Souls, is the you die a lot. It has a mechanic about dying a lot. And that's something I lament. Is there was a game called the Gianna Sisters that came out.
I heard about that but never played it.
It came out a little while ago. It has a bit of a gimmick to it, but it's just a platformer, and it's a pretty good game. Nobody cares about it. There's no gimmick for people to latch onto. There's no... Well, so Shantae people like because the art, it's got humor.
Shantae people like for a lot of different reasons.
It's got art and humor, and then it's got
excellent music,
combat, and like... But if you took the combat and it was just Shantae and her different forms, nobody would play that game. And same thing with Shovel Knight. If you took Shovel Knight's whole aesthetic and you just made a... If you took people who didn't have the talent or even the money and you tried to make Shovel Knight with just the platforming, I don't think anybody would care. There'd be people who'd be like, oh, this game would be really great. But I don't think people care, because people don't care about platformers anymore, or even basic platformers with a little bit of combat.
The thing that makes Shovel Knight work is that everything works. Every aspect of that game is great.
Yeah, well, it's a throwback game. It's a retro throwback game that doesn't rely on
nostalgia.
References.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's... If that game came out years ago, it would fit in. If it came out today, it fits in. If you took the graphics away from that game and you made it like the way the new Shantae looks, it's not pixel art anymore. If you redrew that game so that it didn't have a retro look, it would still be just as great. If you took away the retro music, it still would be just as great.
If they make I should say SNES era, because I don't want to say that Shovel Knight's an NES era game because obviously it has more technology in it.
Yeah, it's like the advanced NES
right
era.
If they make a
like Mega Man 9,
if they make another Shovel Knight, and it's now a SNES platformer, still with like a 2D action platformer like the first game, what Super Nintendo platformer would you like it to emulate the style of? Would you like it to be like Grim Dark, like ActRaiser 2?
I want Kendo Rage. That's what I want. I want fake anime cutscenes.
Shovel Knight already kind of has that.
Have you played Kendo Rage?
I don't think so.
I love it. It's... I wouldn't even say it's a great game. It's good. It's better than a lot of other SNES games. I don't know. I don't know what kind of style. Because the thing that kind of...
What's your favorite SNES platformer?
My favorite SNES platformer? I don't know.
Mine would probably either be ActRaiser, if that counts, or Super Castlevania 4.
See, I was trying to think... Dracula X for SNES is not nearly as good as Dracula X. But
I know how you feel about Dracula X. That's why I said SNES.
But like that's my thing is, even though it's the shittier version of Castlevania Rondo of Blood, it's still good. And I was trying to figure out whether or not I like Castlevania 4 more than that. I also have a lot of nostalgia because I played Castlevania 4 with my grandma. We would sit in the TV room and play Castlevania 4 together. But I don't know. I really, really adore games like Congo's Caper and Kendo Rage, and I only played those games as an adult. I never played them as a kid. So there's no actual nostalgia. Maybe nostalgia for that type of game, but no actual nostalgia for those games specifically. And yet I like them so much.
What if the next Shovel Knight isn't an action platformer at all, but a side-scrolling beat-em-up, like Streets of Rage?
Man.
Where you can play Shovel Knight, Shield Knight.
So the SNES gets all the love. Everybody thinks we're going to do a throwback to the NES. We're going to do a throwback to the Super Nintendo. Nobody ever says, let's do a throwback to the Genesis.
It seems like people's love for Sega starts and stops with the Dreamcast.
Yeah, and the Dreamcast is mostly arcade games. I mean, I grew up with both systems, but I always played my Genesis more. And so I like, even though the sound is worse, even though the graphics are worse, it has a great charm to it that I like way more. It's the difference between playing a game that's a little bit janky and... You look at something like God Hand. If they remade God Hand and it played exactly the same, but it looked better and had better graphics, you wouldn't like it as much, because some of the charm is in how everything looks. It looks like low budget. It looks very janky. And that's, I guess, what I like so much about the Genesis. Well, then you have stuff like Streets of Rage, which is just genuinely good looking, sounds great, all that stuff. So I don't know. I really can't pin down one specific platformer for either game, because I like both of them I like a bunch of different ones in different ways. Yeah. I would hope for a beat 'em up, like Shovel Knight beat 'em up, but the Yacht Club is old way forward people, and they seem to be extremely good at their platformers. Now, I mean, Double Dragon was really good.
The thing about Shovel Knight is anybody can pick up and play that game. Pretty much anyone can understand it. I wouldn't say it's very basic, because of course that game has a very good level of difficulty. But at the same time, it's very easy to pick up and understand. Whereas a Shovel Knight beat 'em up, I think, is a little bit more complex and a little more niche for people.
Yeah, nobody plays beat 'em ups anymore. Nobody plays...
I can't think of a game that exists that I could recommend to more people than Shovel Knight. I can't think of anyone that wouldn't like Shovel Knight.
I honestly... I haven't given that any thought. Like, what a general, all-around video game for everybody would be. The charm about Shovel Knight is that they weren't trying to make a throwback game. I feel like they were trying to make a game the way an NES game was made. It's how I feel about the PlayStation, where I would love to make a video game in the PlayStation era graphics. I wouldn't do a throwback game. I would do a standalone game that has the same shitty polygons, the same shimmering textures, the weird, like, you can't put a roof on a lot of stuff because the camera can't render another layer, things like that.
I was just thinking, if they make a Shovel Knight 64, is it going to have a ton of N64 fog in it? I would hope they wouldn't carry that over, or just have one really foggy level as kind of like a tribute to it.
Yeah, that's what I like about Shovel Knight so much, is it doesn't...
They're not hindered by the NES's capabilities.
Yeah, it's not a nostalgia game. It's a genuinely...
It's more like a tribute game, if anything.
Well, it's a genuinely made NES game. Like, it's people who wanted to make a game like that. Or at least that's the thing I get across. If it was a lower quality game, there would be references all over the place instead of just new material. Yeah, I have less enjoyment for... Your stomach is not happy.
I'm ready for my tuna coma.
The N64 has less nostalgia for me because things are a little bit more tuned up. It has a certain aesthetic. If you showed me an N64 game next to a PS2 game or a Dreamcast game or any of those, I would be like, oh yeah, that's N64. But I mean, I guess that brings me into Hybrid Heaven. Hybrid Heaven has too many N64 problems. It runs with a shitty frame rate. It has nice polygons and textures, but it has low draw distance. The controller I have doesn't function properly. It works. I can move forward, I can press all my buttons and stuff. But the analog sticks are garbage. And even when I was a kid, I had problems with the analog sticks. So it's not even like it's a terribly old controller. And I got a bunch of controllers, and they all have this problem. If I don't have the stick pressed in the forward position completely, my character jogs, he doesn't sprint. So running everywhere is a chore. There's no second camera stick, so I have to stop and recenter my camera all the time. Except there's a few ways to do it, and all of them are equally as terrible. You can either go first person, you can go into a aim your camera third person view, which I don't think centers it, or you have to use your gun and just look around in a very slow, awful manner.
I was just thinking about how, of the 4 games we've done on this podcast so far, 3 of them, you have to constantly reset your camera. And the one that doesn't, Super Mario RPG, has isometric platforming.
Which is bad.
Yeah.
It's...
You'd be like trying to make Baldur's Gate a platformer.
Not to go back to Super Mario, but there's the worst puzzle in human existence in that game. I don't know if you remember what it is.
Is it in the pirate ship?
It is the 3D maze in the end of the game. You have to complete a certain number of trials, and they give you a bunch of them. There's 2 puzzles, there's 2 platformers, and there's 2 quizzes. So you have to, the one is a 3D maze. And what that means is you go into a hole, and the camera kind of follows where Mario is on the screen, but you don't get to see what's underneath the outside layer. So you just run around and jump until you find a hole or a door. I tried to look up a guide to see what's the solution to this, and basically all the guides were like, we don't fucking know, just run around and press jump until you figure out where to go. It's bullshit. And also pretty much sums up the way the camera issues are for that game, and you just don't know where you're jumping.
Luckily, I don't think there'll be camera issues with our next 2 games.
I hope not. The biggest problem with Hybrid Heaven is that the people who played it certainly didn't play fighting games, because the combat is garbage. It's a fighting game, but it's a fighting game with turn-based RPG elements, and so you get into combat and it goes into an arena. In the arena, you have to stop, press X, and then it gives you items or attacks, and then you can either do punches or kicks, and then you pick which punch or kick you want. And if you have a full charged power bar, you can do combos based on your level and how many stamina bars you have saved up. You can do up to like a 5-hit combo. It's awful because there's no footsies, there's no mind games. Even against a computer you can do mind games. The worst part is you would think grabs could help, stop defense, and yet whenever you grab the computer, it puts you into a neutral grab state. So either if the computer grabs you and you mash on A, sometimes you get to throw the computer. Sometimes when you grab the computer, immediately the computer throws you. You don't ever get a I grabbed you, I'm in the win state. It's always a neutral, unless they grab you from behind. You can get knocked down and dizzied, and then they just roll all over you. They can do like 300 damage all at once, and you don't have a chance to heal, and you die. I didn't beat the game because I got frustrated. I didn't feel like playing certain segments over and over again, because the majority of the game outside of combat is just walking through empty hallways or hallways with weird little drones. They don't pose a huge threat. They're just annoying. They knock you down. They do like 70 damage. You can't ever stop. You're supposed to shoot them or run away from them. But since running around is awful and doesn't control well, you sometimes get blown up. You can't pull out your gun fast enough to shoot them, so you get blown up. So sometimes you have to just run past them. Sometimes you have to try to snipe them. There's a small little progression blocker where there's a robot who shoots rockets and lasers and machine guns. And you got to shoot him, but your gun doesn't have infinite range. So you have to run close to him and shoot him. And then you get knocked over because you got hit by a rocket. So you have to stand back up. You have to find a safe place to stand, pull out your gun, shoot the robot. And it goes on forever. It's tedious and annoying.
I guess I should mention with new audio that I didn't beat Maximo. The game is 5 worlds. I got to the 3rd world. And when I got the cutscene post defeating the boss, I got a loading screen that was infinite, and so I just had to reset the game. And so I took the disc to a game store, and they buffed it as best they could, thinking it was a disc issue. It still wouldn't load, and so then I thought maybe it was a memory card issue. So I took the memory card out and started the whole game from scratch and played it without saving up until I was before, and I got the same issue. So I was unable to complete Maximo.
I think it's a slim issue, to be honest. I don't think I've ever played Maximo to completion on my slim PlayStation. I think I only played it on the large... Sonic is not agreeing with you. And
that Sonic food was terrible.
It's pretty awful.
I'm sorry. I don't know why Gabby likes it so much.
I don't. She latches on to stuff like that.
I'm like, I've only been to Sonic once and it sucked. Maybe this will be different.
We go to Venice and she's like, I hate this place. It makes me ill. I'm gonna go to Sonic. And I look at the Venice kitchen and I'm like, man, this place looks clean as shit.
We should have just gone to Venice again.
Yeah.
We'll go there later.
That honey mustard chicken and broccoli with bacon. Whew.
Dude, when you ordered that last night, I was like, is it too late for me to take back my sub?
I was gonna wait because I saw a few of them with broccoli on it. And
I'm a broccoli pizza guy. And
I was like, Andy's probably gonna order one of those, so I'm not gonna jump in and be like, I want it, because there's some other ones I see that I think look pretty good. And I wasn't terribly hungry, so I was gonna maybe just get fries. And then you ordered your sub, and I was like, well, now I look at it more, and it looks really good. And I ordered it, and you're like, fuck. Anyways, Hybrid Heaven.
Wasn't there a third one of you? Yeah, he's in the bathroom.
I was talking to Josh later that night, and we were talking about gun control and taking guns places. And he's like, I'm wearing a gun right now.
I thought you were talking about like Hybrid Heaven still.
He was like, I'm wearing a gun right now, and you wouldn't know it. And I'm like, well, I did know it. I saw it was in your like waistband, like in your holster. And he's like, oh, you did? I'm like, yeah, he saw it when you stood up. He's like, oh, okay. I was like, all right. Did you expect me to freak out? I'm not an anti-Second Amendment.
We live in Lancaster County. We don't live in New York City. Seeing a gun isn't like...
Well, we had We had to talk about how...
It's not even uncommon.
We had to talk about how people get scared whenever they see a person carrying a gun in public. Like, not in their hand, but, like, on their side. And they think, oh, no, that person has a gun. I should be scared.
Open carry is legal.
And the funny thing is, if that person walks into a bank holding a gun, or carrying a gun, not holding a gun, not like, hey, man, but they're standing in line, and you've been waiting for 10 minutes, and then you see they have the gun, and then you freak out. That person's not a danger to you.
The person's not there to rob. No one's going to wait in line to rob
They've
a
had
bank.
plenty of time to start murdering people. I think you're going to be okay. Anyways, Hybrid Heaven. I hated everything about this game eventually.
Except for the story.
The story I thought was pretty neat. I wanted to like this game a lot. I was really excited to play it.
What's really exciting for me is the flow of this podcast is completely different than our first one. This is, since we've already talked about these games, we're just kind of like blowing through it. What are the redeeming qualities of Hybrid Heaven?
Well, I was excited to play this because it's a different RPG. And I want to commend anything that tries to be different.
I guess I should tell you why I recommended it to you. It's because I saw it in Nintendo Power as a kid, and I thought it looked really cool. I never got a chance to play it, and I wanted to play it again recently, and I bought it. You played my copy. I played about 20 minutes and got to a puzzle, and I said, I could figure out how to solve this, or I could just make Josh play it.
So you told me there was puzzles in the game, and you said it was wrestling Tekken type stuff, and I got kind of excited. I didn't know the combat was so shallow and terrible. And I could just be wrong. It could be deep and complex, and I just don't understand. I don't think that's what it is.
See, I thought that in Quest 64, and then I looked up online. They're like, if you're using the rock spell, you're using the best one. It's like, all right.
I don't think that's what it is. I watched another guy do... I checked a guide just to see my progression. And I was going to follow it because I thought maybe it would help me move through the game because it was going to be harder and more complex. And it wasn't. It's pretty much just one straight line. And I watched a Let's Play to just see how far along I was from the end. And I only was missing about 3 hours of game. It's pretty much some major boss fights, and that's it. My awful dismay with the game is that after about the first hour of gameplay, there's no twists in the RPG combat. You don't learn anything that you wish you had known earlier. So in every RPG, there's a point where you get a new spell or a new ability, and you think, how did I ever play this game without it? Or how did I ever play the game without this character that I love? And this game has one character.
Think of Final Fantasy VI. Final Fantasy VI, I remember, was like, this is the best one. It's the best Super Nintendo RPG, except maybe Chrono Trigger. And I started playing, I'm like, yeah, it's all right. I don't really like any of the characters. And then Sabin shows up, and I remember I played on the Game Boy Advance when I first actually played this game, and I think we were friends in middle school or whatever. And I'm like, I don't understand Sabin. He just sits there, and you're like, you got to do motions like a
If I
fighting
remember
game.
correctly, I was playing through the ones on the Game Boy Advance, and I lent you my copy, and you were like, yeah, it's all right. And then you got to the part where Sabin shows up, and you're like, he's really cool. He's just like the Fist of the North Star guy. And I was like, yeah, he's all right. And then I played this game so much as a kid, I carried around a little piece of paper that had Sabin's move list on it. And I was like, well, you got to do his moves. He's got like a laser beam. He's got like a heal. He's got... Welcome to the Rumbly Tummy podcast.
I'm so sorry.
But it's just that the game... You collect abilities in this game by getting hit with them. You can learn some naturally, but you typically get hit by them. So I received Pile Driver because one of the bad guys pile drived me. Which is frustrating, because the perfect way to play this game is to not get hit. You usually want to back away from people, let your power meter charge, and then wreck somebody.
Oh, fuck, you're back to Hybrid Heaven. I thought you were talking about Final Fantasy VI still.
No.
I'm like, I don't remember that.
It's the worst part, is it's not footsies, it's playing lame, letting your thing charge, and then going back at it. This game would be better if it had no health system, or if your health recharged at the very end of the match. Because then you would be more willing to do risky things, go in for... it needs to be a fighting game. It needs to be closer to a fighting game, and it needs to be farther away from whatever stupid shit it is. It treats fighting game moves like they're regular RPG attacks. So they don't have tracking abilities. They don't have launchers. They don't have any kind of frame advantage. So there's a step ability, which is useless. There's a cover, or not cover, counter ability, which sometimes works. Sometimes your character acts like he's doing the motion and just gets hit in the face. Sometimes moves knock you down. Sometimes they just knock you back.
It sounds a lot like wrestling, from what I know about wrestling.
Except that when you play the wrestling games, there's at least like a flow to it.
I mean wrestling in real life.
Well, wrestling in real life, wrestling in real life at least still follows rules, and this game ignores most of them. It would benefit from a lot of things. It would benefit from a partner character or something. I want this game to be remade, but better. This game is a good idea. It's just not done right. It's the person behind it just didn't understand what they were trying to emulate, I feel.
Is Hybrid Heaven just like a really, really shitty version of God Hand?
Yes. Because whenever you go to set up combos, you can do a real-time like edit where you just kind of do the moves and then you can save that. And so in God Hand, you set up your little setup of moves, and then you go through and just mash square and you get a shitty combo, and you're like, I hate that one, and you change it around. And this, it doesn't matter what your combo is. I could do right hook, left punch, uppercut, right kick. It all is just numbers. They don't have any sort of properties. There's no launchers. There's no... and at the end, almost always, your attack knocks them back. And it takes forever to charge up your meters, so you just have to back up. Because your damage is dependent on your meter. It's like an active time battle system, which is just frustrating. The whole thing is just frustrating because it doesn't follow any sort of logical fighting game ideas. I'm glad they tried it. I wish they'd done it better. Especially since the N64 had no RPGs.
Well, we've played 2 of the 3.
Yeah.
You might as well go for broke and play Aiden Chronicles.
Yeah. Well, Paper Mario.
Oh, sorry.
2 of the 4.
Every month I keep hoping you're going to be like, oh, your game next month is Mischief Makers. And I'd be like, yes. Every month it's not Mischief Makers, because I haven't played it since I was a kid. But
well, you got 5 Shadowrun games to go through. So,
okay, Mr. 8 Ace Combats.
And, well, I mean, then there's mods that are full extra games, and there's also Shadowrun Chronicles, Shadowrun Chronicles Infected.
I'll play the 360 game with you.
The 360 game I own, I forgot about it.
I'm pretty sure all the servers are shut down. So
yeah, it's super dead.
No one's playing that.
And it's no fun. But I did like the story for Hybrid Heaven. It's fairly simple, but I didn't expect it at all.
Fairly simple?
What?
It's about aliens that are cloning people.
Well, so the gist of the story...
I mean, go on. I don't know what the story is.
The gist of the story is aliens landed on the planet. They stopped to just kind of like break and refuel, and one of them turned traitor and got humans involved. And so the humans are like, well, this is great. We'll just replace the president with a fake version, and then we'll control America. And the story picks up with one of the fake Secret Service guys being told he has to go meet with the liaison between the underground base and the president's Secret Service. So he goes down into the subway, goes to talk to this weird-looking dude with blonde hair named Diaz. You find out later. And Diaz shoots the guy in the head. Now, this is the main character. Like, the gray-haired guy is the main character.
But he's a clone.
Yes, but you don't know that in the beginning. So the opening is pretty cool. It does throw your expectations for a loop. And then you play as Diaz. And everybody's like, oh, Diaz. I wonder if that picked up on the mic. But, I don't know. but the...
It's like turning on like night vision. Welcome to the Sam Fisher podcast.
But Diaz is an executive in the underground base. So you go through and you talk to certain scientists, and they're like, oh yeah, so what is killing you right now?
Just,
All right.
I'm thinking of you laughing earlier talking about tuna.
Oh God. Oh, this is a train wreck.
It's better than the last one.
It's better than the last 2,
Yeah.
or 3 recordings. Anyways, Diaz goes and talks to these dudes who are like engineers and stuff, and they're all like, well, yeah, we've got all kinds of stuff down here, and you get your key card, and you go and, sorry, I just thought about something in the beginning of the game.
Jesus.
But
You're going to be doing a lot of editing on this.
my brain I'm not editing any of it. My brain shut down in the middle where I was thinking about how these security cameras come after you, but they don't shoot you. And I was like, that's pretty clever. Anyways.
It just reminds me of those stupid commercials where someone's at a bank and like some guy comes in to rob the place and they'll look at the security guard to stop him. And he's like, oh, I just monitor you. I'm not security. And they're like, don't have a system that just monitors. Have one that's secure.
Well, they shoot lasers at you later in the game. But in the beginning of the game, you're not a bad guy. So they don't do anything. Yeah, so you let all these bioweapons free.
That's the enemy bioweapon?
I don't know why you let the bioweapons free, to be fair. I mean, they hurt some of the scientists and shit, but they don't... Maybe I missed something, but I have no idea why you release these bioweapons.
Do you have to fight them?
Yeah. I mean, I know why you release them. You release them in order to go past the door that you couldn't go past, but why did you release the bioweapons to go through one door? I don't know. There's probably a reason and I just missed it, because it seems like a silly thing when they put more thought into the story.
The bottom line is...
Well, anyways, you meet a gray alien, and the gray alien's like, you're actually Johnny Slater. We just replaced your memories with the body, so we're return your body to normal so you look like normal. We have the real Diaz in a sleeping chamber. He then later breaks free and goes looking for you. I never fought him. I quit the game before I did. So the thing is, you have to go...
I can tell you how the game probably ends. You fist fighting Diaz on top of Metal Gear.
I'm not sure if Diaz is going to be the sub-boss or the final boss. I would hope the final. But anyways, you meet a gray alien. The gray alien tells you the whole story, and then he's like, we'll return your body to normal. You look pretty cool. You're a gray-haired guy. You look kind of snake-like. And you have to go... You find one of the dudes, and he's like, we already got the president, so you guys are too late. Then you go save the president. You keep his memories from getting loaded up to the fake president. And then you have to go find the navigator. They're like, okay, the navigator is what is going to get us out of here. He's a special alien. He powers the ship. He gets us the fuck out. And you go through a awful... They tell you what it's going to happen. They're like, oh, there's a bunch of guards protecting the navigator. You're going to have to fight all these guards. In my head, I saw something cool. What I actually played was you walk in a circle, go through every room, fight a whole bunch of elemental monsters. You go to one end of the room, upload your key card, go back to the other side of the room you just traveled to, and put your key card in. You go to the next level. You repeat, and you do it about 3 times. And then finally you get the navigator. He goes inside your body. And then you're like, all right, next deal. We got to go up, get him to the saucer at the top so that he can fly, pack everything up, and leave. And I started on that journey, and then I quit. I couldn't do it. I died to something dumb. I don't remember exactly what it was. I'm pretty sure a enemy grabbed me after I grabbed him. He grabbed me, or I grabbed him, and he initiated the throw, headbutted me, did about 400 damage. I have about 1,200 damage at this point. I didn't grind it all. There's no real grinding parts. There's enemies that respawn, but they tend to be hard enough. It's not smart to fight them over and over because it hurts you too much. And you are underleveled by just fighting the enemies you come across. I didn't skip any enemies, and yet I felt underleveled. So anyways, he headbutted me, did about 1/3 of my health, and then while I was on the floor, did about another 1/4 of my HP. And so where I went from easily safe, don't need to heal because I'd overheal, to dead. And I thought, that's the third or fourth time it's happened to me. I don't want to spend another hour walking. It's not even an hour fighting enemies. It's an hour walking through hallways that I didn't want to do again. So I stopped.
Just like Quest 64.
Yeah, I quit. There's just too much in the game that's fundamentally not fun. I don't know if they run out of time. I don't know if they ran out of money. I just don't think they quite had a spark of inspiration to do this game. It doesn't feel inspired. That's my problem. It feels like they thought it was a good idea at some point, and then it got mired and lost, and nobody cared about it after that. It's like the stories of Crash Bandicoot, where they said they were enjoying the way Crash Bandicoot moved and played, but they didn't have boxes until the beta or alpha stage of the game, and they decided to add boxes when the game is pretty much finished. And they're like, oh, that makes it better. We can lead people around. We can make them do stuff. And so they went and designed the game with boxes in it. That game would have been a train wreck without boxes. And this game feels like it needed boxes. Not literally, but something that made it interesting to play.
I watched you play for about 5 minutes, and I couldn't see why you kept playing it. So aside from the fact I was making you.
Yeah, I mean, you said that there was a puzzle. There's no puzzles. It is, you walk up to a wall, there's a laser of a certain color. Then you gotta find a box to shoot. It's usually on the wall. Sometimes it's floating in the air. You shoot the box, it disables the laser wall. In many cases, there's a laser wall, and a laser wall, and a laser wall. So you gotta kill a laser wall, find another box, kill that laser wall. In one case, you go down one hallway, and you find a laser wall. You go to the other hallway. You go down that hallway a little bit, you kill a box. The box deactivates the laser in the other hallway. You go to the other hallway and you shoot a box, and then you got to go back to the other hallway to progress farther down that hallway because you just disabled that hallway's laser. And then you grab a key card, and then you go back to the other hallway to disable the laser, to go back to the other hallway to use the key card on the door. It's a lot of busy work. There's a lot of stuff they throw in to give the impression you're not doing the same thing over and over, but you are. They give you the impression that some of the enemies have different fighting styles. They don't really. Some of the guys have like Muay Thai kicks and stuff, but they all do the same thing. There's no better way to deal with kicks. It's not like you have a manual dodge. It's not like you have anything. You can step, but that's kind of a shit toss whether or not you actually get out of time. The whole thing is about playing lame, and it's awful. It doesn't feel good.
One thing that interested me about Hybrid Heaven is it seems like they made a goulash. They took a whole bunch of random stuff and threw it in a pot. And I was interested to see how that would all come together. I thought it might be a spectacular failure, but I thought it'd be interesting to have all this weird stuff in a game. However, from watching you play it, it just seems like the game's boring.
Yeah. I mean, it really
It's not even so bad it's good. It's, you just be sitting there like watching YouTube while you play through it.
It really would be nice. The music's not awful. It's not great, but it's like ambient kind of music. It's okay. But it should be better. The movement controls aren't dreadful, but they're not. You don't enjoy moving your character. They should be better. The combat is serviceable, but it's not fun. The character designs are all right. In fact, the character designs I would say that's the best. The monsters and all that look pretty cool, but they get recycled. I understand. But there's no real difference between them. I wish this had a better developer, or I wish this had I don't even think more time would fix this game. I just think it needs somebody who's helping designing or consulting designing who understands one of the elements of this game to make that element really stand out. It only needs one of those things to do really well, and it doesn't. It has voice acting in the beginning. It actually looks quite nice in the beginning. I didn't expect such a high quality cutscene and story presentation. In fact, I didn't really expect much from the story at all. But there's some minor platforming, which is terrible.
So I would recommend Maximo to just about anybody. I think anybody... Well, I shouldn't say that. It's no Shovel Knight. I'd give it to anybody that's comfortable with 3D games. An older person who's only ever played Mario or Tetris probably can't really grasp Maximo. Who would you recommend Hybrid Heaven to?
Well, first of all, I want to say on the Maximo thing, the the way we agreed Shovel Knight 64 should probably play is like Maximo, but but better. Like, I feel like Yacht Club, if they made a 3D old school
I don't think
style,
there was ever a point in Shovel Knight where I thought the game wanted me to die.
I feel like they would do a little bit better. Well, now they have better technology, so they would make it, the camera would work better. A lot of that stuff would just function a little bit better. And Maximo feels in general like an N64 game.
Oh yeah.
But anyways, I should tell my little story about how we met, because I was lost in the last podcast.
When I stabbed your hand?
No.
Oh, okay. Let's not talk about that.
I can still talk about how you stabbed my hand. You gave me my first tattoo.
Remember that time I went to the Final Fantasy concert?
And my girlfriend stepped in front of a beta male and got a picture with the composer. No, I wish oh my god. I wish, anyways, I had gotten digital cable over the summer. I was telling my buddy about it, everybody about it. I thought it was great. Because
You mean I wasn't your first?
I found a TV show or a channel called G4. We were flipping through channels, and I thought, G4, that might be a game thing, maybe. And then later that night, my grandpa was flipping through the channels and came across G4, which was like channel 160 something, and there was a guy standing in heart-shaped boxers. And I was like, wait, go back. Like, what was that? And it was Corey Rouse for Cheat, and he was talking about Maximo, and I was like, he's talking about video games on the TV? I don't know how this is happening. And I really loved old G4. I'm not sure how much I'd like it now, but old G4 was quite fun. They talked about video games. They had top 10 lists. They did a lot of cool stuff. And at school, in the 8th grade, you went to a different elementary school, but we went to the same middle school. And then finally, kind of like our circle of friends that we both had kind of merged the two of us, and you were at our lunch table. And I started talking about G4, and you were like, you have G4 as well? Have you ever watched the Anime Network? And then we became friends, and I'd come over and we'd play Nightfire on a 9-inch TV.
Yes.
But
well, remember, my mom had a really big screen TV.
Yeah.
That she won, I think, from like a holiday raffle at work or something.
Yes.
And so that's when I was first introduced to the wonders of cable television with a lot of channels. I remember her talking about, she's like, there's HD TV, or there's HD television channels that look better. And I'm like, that doesn't matter. Now, of course, this is a long time ago.
Yeah, this is in like 2003.
No,
right?
It's more like 2000, 2001.
No, it wasn't that long ago.
She got that TV, I think, before Halo 1 came out. That was an old-ass television.
Anyways, but the point is,
it was like a 64-inch TV, and it was an old CRT TV. It took up half the living room.
It wasn't that big. I mean, it was big in inches, but it wasn't. Yeah. It was still a flat screen. You had in the corner. Anyways,
then my dad had to get one. And then I played Halo 2 so much it burnt the HUD.
You say you played Halo 2 so much,
yeah,
but your dad had a fair share in that.
I think what ruined that television was I was playing Halo 2 late at night, and I jumped to a part of a multiplayer map that you weren't supposed to get to. I'd never seen anybody at. And so I practiced it so I could get it done almost flawlessly. And I was so proud of myself I wanted to show my dad, but it was like midnight. And so I went to sleep with the TV on. When I woke up, I'm pretty sure that having the TV just on one static image for that length of time. Of course, it also could have been the hundreds of hours of playing Halo 2 that burnt the motion tracker and ammo count.
That was weird times. Went to Rurouni Kenshin. Anyways, I won't tell the story about how you stabbed my hand. Because you wrote Vote Green Party in my Halo book.
You won't tell me the story of how I stabbed your hand using the Amakekiryu Nahiri no Meki? Just segueing from Rurouni Kenshin.
But
to be fair, it was a Sakabato pen. So who, if anyone, would you recommend Hybrid Heaven to?
I don't think anybody.
You think this game should be lost to time?
No, I think it should be remembered so somebody can do something similar.
So if we're watching E3 next year, and they come up and they announce Hybrid Heaven 2 developed by Shinji Mikami, would you be excited?
No, because whatever his last game was dreadful. He should retire.
Evil Within?
Yeah, it was awful.
Maybe you don't get survival horror games, Josh.
Evil Within is a game that needs a sequel, just like Hybrid Heaven, or it needs a remake. It has good ideas. It just doesn't do them well, which is hard to say about the guy who made RE4. Like that, there's no reason Evil Within should have been the way it was. But anyways, Hybrid Heaven, I want to see remade. I want to see these bad games, or maybe not bad, but unrealized or under.
I don't think there's been any game we played so far on the podcast of the 4 games we played that have been a bad idea. They all seem to be pretty good ideas that either are well received, like Super Mario RPG, or the other 3. Well, no, Maximo is also pretty well loved.
Yeah,
but the other 2.
There's 2 sides to the coin of this. Hybrid Heaven and Quest 64, I would love to see remakes of. We do have sequels to Maximo and Super Mario RPG.
If you squint really hard, Dragon's Dogma is a Quest 64 remake.
But Super Mario RPG got sequels that improved the game. Everybody loves Paper Mario and the Thousand Year Door. But
your game for next month.
But Maximo 2, I think Maximo 2 would solve...
Oh, right, there is a Maximo 2.
Yeah, I think it would solve your complaint on the platforming. But it...
I have zero interest in playing Maximo 2.
But it agitates me because it is no longer a SNES-style platformer in 3D.
It's a PS2 platformer.
It's a PS2 platformer. When you collect so many coins, you turn into death, and you get to fly around.
That's already kind of in the first game. When you max out your armor and you have that mask.
That was from, Super Ghosts and Goblins. When you get the gold armor, you get, and Maximo... See, there's a difference. In Maximo, you collect all that stuff, and the only time you ever get, like, a super death move is you collect that thing that makes it so that your gold armor turns into a death armor. And it just kills everybody. But in Maximo 2, it's a separate power-up altogether, if I remember right. Just the game, Maximo 2 is more polished. Maximo 2 is better looking. It has a better story. It has a better... Everything about it is better, except because of that, it's generic PS2 platformer. It's not awful. It's a really good game. It's really well made. But it lost what made Maximo 1 fun. It was the SNES-style gameplay. So even though I've played Maximo 2 about 2 or 3 times, and I like it a lot, I do not have any desire to go back and play it. Or, I'm never going to be like, oh, you know what, you should play Maximo 2. It's great. You should play it. It's another game. It lost what was special to it. So in the way that Mario got better, Maximo got worse. And I would love to see Quest and Super Mario RPG because, or not Super Mario RPG, Quest and Hybrid Heaven, because I don't think they can go any lower. So
that's how I feel about stuff like Highlander. I feel like Highlander's a really good idea.
We got sequels for Highlander.
Executed really poorly.
Guess how the sequels to Highlander go.
Exactly. I think I don't want to get too...
But if they made a remake and it was basically Skyfall, but Highlander.
Well, my biggest problem... I watched Highlander for the first time recently, and I thought it was a terrible movie. I thought it had a cool idea, but... And I shouldn't say recently, this was a few years ago, and I remember watching it and thinking it was just a crappy movie. And people love that movie.
I do. I love it.
And I just remember thinking they had such a cool idea for a movie, and they wasted. I mean, a lot of the fights take place off screen. I think Highlander made nowadays, if you have someone that knows action, it would be a really good movie. I mean, the concept's great. Almost like the best warrior of each culture has to go up against each other. right away you get rid of the whole gun thing by talking about how they had to be decapitated by a sword. Unless you pull like a Punisher, have a gun that shoots swords. But I would love to see a Highlander, and the same kind of vein. I'd like to see, like Hybrid Heaven. Again, it's an interesting game, but I wouldn't be sad if it's lost to time. I don't think there's anything inherently in there that's really special or worth keeping, like Highlander's whole there can only be one idea. You need like a really cool idea. Like Quest 64, as kind of crappy as that game is, it has a really neat idea where you're just a little boy out to find your father and save the world, and as you go on, you get these spirits and get stronger. And I don't want to harp too much on or talk too much about Quest 64, but with Hybrid Heaven, it's like, what's cool about it? The plot's certainly different, but not, we've seen games like Metal Gear Solid 2 that just go way off the rails
It's a body snatcher, replace the government story, so it's not great.
Right. We had that with Metal Gear out the ass. You have the gameplay itself, which the only other thing notable about the gameplay is it's an RPG fighting game. Well, I'd rather sit down and play Super Robot Taisen than...
See, Super Robot Taisen has the same issues this game has. And that is, it's boring. The actual juggling and all that becomes garbage after like the first 2 hours of the game. And I beat that game twice. I like it a lot. It's just, after a certain point, you do get new abilities in Hybrid Heaven, or in Super Robot Taisen, that make it so that new juggles and combos are better, which Hybrid Heaven doesn't. I've seen games done similar to Hybrid Heaven that make it so that I know Hybrid Heaven can be really good, but they have to redesign the combat system so that there's juggles.
For me to be excited by a Hybrid Heaven sequel, it would have to be a 2D RPG and done by someone like Axis or Vanillaware, and make it just like a 2D JRPG, and then when you get into a combat, it'd be like BlazBlue or something like that.
No. You can do 3D.
Honestly, the game
game really well.
The game that I think of what I want Hybrid Heaven to be is Odin Sphere, Leiftrazier, however it's pronounced.
No. That sounds awful. I would like to see it remade, but I'm not sure who in the world, what RPG developer could actually do it well. I think Square Enix could, but I don't think they will do anything on a small scale anymore. They are just too big for that.
Hybrid Heaven by Square Enix is basically the third birthday.
Yeah, well, no. The Parasite Eve games are similar to this in that
they're garbage.
Well, in that you have real-time battles until you activate a turn-based system. But the thing with Parasite Eve is you have like a sphere of influence. You have different moves. You have different things you can do. And this game doesn't have any of that. You have weapons. You have consumable weapons, which you can shoot at people. But you can miss and they can sidestep them, and they don't technically do very much damage. Whereas the opponent can use their gun 1,000 times on you. You can only use yours once or twice because it's consumable. So there's no zoning fireball game. There's nothing like that. There's no stepping or ducking or blocking or launching. Like, if you made this game so that there was a move that gave you, like... I mean, it's as simple as saying, oh, you have an Electric Wind God fist. You do it, your character gains a little bit of stamina on block, or they lose stamina if hit, but it launches so you can do a combo in the air. And since in Tekken, the Electric Wind God fist is +5, I think, it's the same as basically getting more stamina to continue your rush down. That's the way it should be. It should be so that your stamina gauges how well your rush down is. It gauges how well your turtling is. Things like that.
I think...
And the game doesn't do any of it.
My issue is if you make a game that's literally just a JRPG, but whenever there's a screen transition, it goes to a 2D fighter. It would be... Balancing that would be almost impossible.
See, you don't want to do a 2D fighter though.
You mean to keep the RPG elements?
Yeah, the 2D fighter is too simple. You need to have it be 3D. Because what do you put into a 2D fighter as an RPG? Like nothing. There is RPG-like games that are just 2D fighters, and you put stats into different abilities and movement. You need to have it to be 3D in order to give more stats, more things to specialize in, so that every character isn't 3 types.
Okay, let's say there's a game out there that's a 3D RPG, and when you go into combat, it's like Tekken or Soul Calibur. I think it'd be incredibly difficult to balance because the skill gap in fighting games is so large, and you have to make it still fair. You'd have to make enemies that RPG players could beat, and it would still be interesting.
You're not
for fighting
playing a fighting game. You're playing an RPG that looks like a fighting game, pretty much. So the difficulty in Tekken is somebody does their hop kick. You need to know which direction to dodge that specific hop kick or you're getting launched. You need to know whether or not you're blocking high or low. And once your brain figures out all of this stuff, you then have to execute it within a couple frames. In an RPG, you remove all of the execution and you boil it down to how intelligent are you at the game, which is RPGs. What element do I want to use? What build do I want to have? So say your character wants to be built. Say you're a big fan of Lily. You like speed, you like a quick jab, you like to do side steps. You don't necessarily need to be the best zoner. You don't need to have the best standing roundhouse. But if you've spent the whole game putting stats into your character's agility, so now your sidestep is super good, whenever one of the enemies goes to throw a jab, you can sidestep. Or so you go up against the enemy who's looks like he's Muay Thai and activates like the RPG shit. You know that he's gonna do a jab because he typically does the jab. Then you do the rock paper scissors thing and you crouch because jabs go over your crouch.
So basically, it's kind of like with Final Fantasy games, and where you eyeball the enemy to guess whether he's gonna be like a spellcaster or a brute.
It should be Vagrant Story or Parasite Eve, except with fighting game stuff. Maybe not even need a sphere of influence, but whenever you show in Tekken, whenever you want to show a character's range of movement in the guides and stuff they sell, they have the motion the character goes through. They show it in the Bloodborne guide as well. You can do that, but in real time in the game, you can tell your character's standing roundhouse is going to do this move, is going to be high. If you land it, it's going to cost this much stamina. If you miss, it's going to cost... There's ways to balance that out.
Kind of similar to Legend of Legaia.
Yeah, but Legend of Legaia is straight turn-based.
Right.
But I do like the way Legend of Legaia works, where you can do combos and still build your power meter, which is the problem with this game. Is if you move too fast, it makes your power meter go slower. If you activate your battle window, it takes power meter away immediately. So I understand they don't want you just mashing the button in order to slowly progress the game as if a fake slow motion. But at the same time, I'll go to activate combat and then want to back out because I'm not in a good position or whatever. And now I have to stand and do nothing because I got to wait for my power meter to go back up. I like the idea. I'm really frustrated that they didn't do the idea even remotely well. And again, I just don't think anybody on the team... Well, 3D fighters were fairly new at the time, so I understand maybe not understanding them terribly well. But the concepts they don't use are present in Street Fighter 2, and yet they still didn't do any of that. There's no mind games, there's no blocking. I mean, there's a guard button, but the guard is not up to you. Your character guards, and whether it succeeds or fails is up to random chance.
Well, we discussed this previously in the audio that's since been torched, but Hybrid Heaven, when it premiered at E3, it premiered obviously made on a computer, not on an N64, and it blew people away with the way it looked. Everyone's like, that's Konami's next big game. That looks beautiful. And the final game doesn't look anywhere close to it.
Yeah, there's a high definition mode in this game. It drops the frame rate to 10 frames a second. but there's a letterbox high resolution and a high resolution. It doesn't look that good. It's sharper, but I think the look of the game was better before. It's just a very frustrating game because I can see how a few tweaks here and there to the systems would make it a lot more fun. It could be a much better game simply by adding some stealth elements to it. You're supposed to be sneaking around as it is, but you don't ever sneak past. A little more Metal Gear Solid would have made the overworld stuff, like the non-physical combat stuff, better. Just there's a lot of stuff that could have been slightly tweaked and would have been much better. I guess that's all I have to say about it. Is small tweaks, and this game could have been and something exceptional.
It missed by a hair's breadth. It was unplayable.
Yeah, I mean, really, it's all of every aspect of this game has a very small shortcoming. But whenever all of those shortcomings work in conjunction, it is less than the sum of its parts. Each one of these parts, when you examine them simply by themselves, you're like, it's not that bad. But when you have to do all of them, it's unbearable. And a lot of the cheap, some would say shitty games we buy and play have at least one thing about them that's a little bit special and is a nice spark. This game's missing that in every spot of its gameplay. So that's all I have to say about it. This is unfortunate miss of something special. So
Maximo, I'd recommend it just about anybody.
I wouldn't recommend this to anybody.
Hybrid Heaven, we wouldn't recommend it.
I would recommend it to a developer to maybe push. Be like, rub into some of your producer friends and be like, you want to fund a video game? But that's about it. I wouldn't recommend this for anybody to play. Next month, you have Shadowrun Returns, one of my favorites.
Really?
Yeah.
Like one of your actual favorite games?
Well, I mean, it's the worst of the new Shadowrun games. But those games, in general, they're all very similar with minor tweaks that make them better as you go along.
Well, they're based on like pen and paper stuff, right?
Yeah, Shadowrun's a pen and paper game, and this is the Baldur's Gate 2 Shadowrun.
Yeah, you're saying Baldur's Gate. I'm getting a little flustered in here.
It's not as long, it's not as deep as Baldur's Gate because it's a smaller team. It's a Kickstarter game.
When you create a character, do you have to roll for stats?
No, but you can pick all your stats as you go. See, the rolling for stats thing I hate anyways. You might as well just... And this is a bit of a tangent because it's a D&D thing, but nobody rolls.
That's my favorite.
Nobody rolls for stats anymore in D&D. And the reason is nobody wants a shitty character. And this is something I have a problem with.
I don't mind having a shitty character.
Well, the fun thing about doing D&D a lot of the times is you sit down, you build your character sheet, you roll your dice for your character. If you roll like a 10, you're like, well, that's underneath what I should do. I can't just have a character who's worthless at everything. So you roll again. You just roll until you have a decent number set. But people these days, they don't want to go into a D&D campaign with a character who's garbage at almost everything. And I don't mind that because I already play D&D very unorthodox, where everybody else is just trying to play it like a video game.
I'm a human who's garbage at pretty much everything, so I can really relate to those kind of characters.
But my problem with playing D&D with people nowadays is everybody's been growing up on video games. And nobody thinks this isn't a video game. This is pen and paper. The creator of the rules is sitting across from me. I can do whatever I want. So whenever I play with Gideon and Corey, they tend to get upset at me because I ask questions like, well, this river, which way does the river flow? Is it going uphill, downhill, or not? Well, uphill. Is it going
what a fantasy world this is a river going uphill.
Is it going up the board, down the board, like which way? And they're like, what does it matter? And I'm like, well, I just want to know. And so in one specific case, I wanted to know which way the river went. Because if I remember correctly, my character, or one of the characters, went downstream in the river and snuck up behind people. And that's the kind of thing I want. Or things like... Corey was trying to get us to wrap up because she was tired and she wanted to go. So she tried to throw a troll or an ogre or something at us that was not, we weren't going to have a chance to fight. and so we were going to want to run. And
so you defiantly said,
of course, she didn't think. She thought we would run away, and she didn't realize that you always want to do the next thing. And by the grace of just, her not thinking about it, I think Gideon's character spoke troll or something like that. And in his character backstory, he's like proficiently talks to trolls. He's buddies with trolls. And so he's like, oh, so they've got a troll like chained up? She's like, yeah. And he's big and he's pissed and he has a tree like as a club. He's like, I want to say in troll tongue, I want to greet him, say hi, and that we're going to set him free and help him. He just has to start killing all of these monsters. And she's like, guys, I'm really tired. And that's the thing is, in D&D and tabletop games, too many people don't want to do the weird thing. They don't want to be the guy who's like, well, we're in a room, and I don't know what the room is being lit by. There's no lights. There's candles. Where are the candles at? So Corey's like, I don't know, there's like some torches around the room. And I'm like, how many torches? Can I use these torches to burn the oil that was on, like things like that. So that's why people min-max their stats, and I don't even think D&D has a stat rolling system anymore. They just allocate stats because people don't want to be shit at everything. AD&D was the last time they really did that. So that's the problem with Baldur's Gate as well, is you roll for stats, but if you're rolling more than once, you're already defeating the purpose of rolling for stats.
I mean, I've played quite a lot of Baldur's Gate. And, I mean, I usually play like a paladin type or someone who needs at least a little bit of physical acumen, because playing a low-level spellcasting character in advanced D&D isn't very fun. I know people talk about how broken, like, gnome mage illusionist is in Baldur's Gate 1 and 2.
They get stronger as they go, but they start awful.
That's not fun. Just throw rocks at people for hours. So, if I play a character who's like a ranger or something, I'll settle for like 14, 15 strength. If I'm playing like a warrior paladin, I'll settle for like 16, 17 strength. I don't need to hit 18 and like 99 exceptional strength or anything like that. I don't want to be a useless, but I don't have to be, I don't have to be XX Super Saiyajin Darth Revan running around one-shotting everybody.
See, I can play a 5'3", semi-weak, mildly charismatic character in
life.
Not that short. In D&D, but that's because I can take and, when we're at dinner, be a weirdo and steal a chicken leg or carry off with a piece of glass and then use that glass to throw in somebody's eyes.
I want to roleplay as the character that Peter Jackson played in the first Lord of the Rings movie, where he's just walking around eating a chicken leg for a scene.
I mean, that you can do bullshit stuff in D&D and get away with it because your ingenuity tends to be rewarded by the dungeon master. And the problem with rolling stats in Baldur's Gate is you don't have anything clever you can do. You're limited by the video game. So there's never any solution like, I wanted to steal a pewter candlestick and then I wanted to fucking throw it at the guy in the middle of combat. Stuff like that. So yeah, I don't miss the stat rolling in video games because it's just pointless, because you should always min-max. Anyways, they give you set character types. You don't have to follow them.
Shadowrun. I forgot.
In Shadowrun, you should follow them if you don't know what to do.
I have absolutely no idea what to do in Shadowrun. The only thing I know about Shadowrun is that you like it. That's about it.
I've said before, Shadowrun nowadays is a little bit more enjoyable than it was in the 90s. Because in the 90s, it was sincere. And nowadays, I don't want to say it's ironic.
It's campy.
Yeah, I don't want to say it's ironic, but it's a loving look back at, like, do you remember when we thought that was legitimately cool? Oh, it's funny now. You see, like, the 90s ads for Shadowrun, it's a guy who's shirtless and a girl next to him wearing, like, a leather bra and carrying a keyboard, and they're walking down the street. That wasn't a joke. That was supposed to be badass. And nowadays, the modernization of it has made it a little bit better. feel.
I could do a whole podcast on old gaming advertisements, how great they were.
Yeah, I like the new Shadowrun more than the old Shadowrun. I like both of them, but the new one I feel is just a little bit more refined and good because it's a loving look back at the way the 90s used to be and not sincerely weird and campy. I like the fact it has trolls and elves and all that in it. That makes it pretty cool.
Is it like Cyberpunk Discworld?
A little bit, in ways. I mean, there's a lot of like humor to it, semi-meta humor. There's weird things like the one president of a corporation is a dragon. Dragons in this game, or in this world, are the worst. They're the most strongest beings. They're smart, intelligent, they're semi-invincible. And one of the dragons, who I think you meet in Shadowrun Returns, doesn't like the fact that another dragon who's part of a corporation has become president of the United States, and so he assassinates him. And so you have this war of dragons, but one of them's the president of the United States, the other one's a German dragon. It's just, it's fun, pretty much. It does have serious stories, but it doesn't take itself seriously. There's weird things like in the very beginning of Shadowrun Returns, the guy you talk to, Sam, he's like, if you're reading this message, somebody geeked me. It's like, fuck.
Shadowrun Returns will be the first game I go into completely blind. Quest 64 I played as a kid, and I played I think a little bit when I was older, but not for many, many years. And Maximo I never played, but I remember the Maximo hype when that game came out. Was popular. I remember the G4 stuff, of course.
And you're friends with me, so I'm sure you've seen it played more than once.
Yeah. But Shadowrun Returns, if you ask me to even try and picture the UI in my head, I can't do it. Think of just Baldur's Gate, but in neon lights.
It's a good game. It looks pretty. It's got nice art. The environments, since it's not 2D, but the environments are in like a flat, almost 2D look.
I assume it's like isometric.
Yeah. So the environments as you move tend to kind of shift a little bit, but they're drawn. There's a lot of real nice detail, stuff like that. The combat is tactical, so like it's turn-based, but you move behind cover and stuff like that. I like it a lot, and like I said, Returns is the worst of these three, but Returns is the earliest of the three, and it's the hardest one to go back to after you've played the other ones. Shadowrun Dragonfall adds a bunch of improvements to the UI and the way the game plays. It makes Returns a bit of a chore because you don't have those niceties. And Hong Kong changes the entire VR world, so then going back to the other ones is weird because the whole thing's been changed a little bit.
So next month I'll be playing the worst out of a trilogy. You'll be playing the supposed best of a trilogy in Ace Combat 5, the trilogy of Ace Combat 4, 5, and 0. They released that order, but 0 is a prequel to 5. Ace Combat 5, of course, I picked because I feel like, well, one, we haven't played too many great games for this thing. And Ace Combat 5, I know for a fact, even not having played it, I know is a great game. It's one of those games like, I could ask someone, what do you think of Metal Gear Solid 3? And they'll say, well, I never played it, but everyone really loves it. It's kind of like Resident Evil 4 status or Ocarina of Time status, where you don't have to play it to know. Going into it, you're going to get at least good experience. Ace Combat 5, from what I understand, has great, obviously, gameplay, plot, music, characters. I'm interested again to hear what your thoughts are on it, because I also want to play it, and I don't think you're going to have a bad time with it.
I'm excited. I played Ace Combat. The first game I ever played on the PlayStation was Air Combat. I've played Ace Combat 1 through 3. So, I like them a lot. I would like to go back and play some of them because I hear some of them are pretty good. Ace Combat 3 being the one that I really probably should go back and play. I beat it as a kid, but I didn't know that half that game was chopped out.
You'd have to play the Japanese version.
The Japanese version recently got available in the US. I think you can get it on the PlayStation Store.
From what I understand from the Ace Combat fan base, which I have a lot of friends that are really into Ace Combat, and they say either Japanese 3 or just regular 5 is probably the best game of the series. Not to say that 4 and 0 aren't great. It's just from what I understand, 4, 5, and 0 are all great, but the jump to 5 was a huge leap forward. It has, I want to say, co-op. It has multiplayer, like a deathmatch type thing. Whereas I'm not sure if 4 had those. I'm not sure if 0 has those. 0 I know is a prequel, but I think one of the things that hurts 0 is the leap from 4 to 5. You go from like a really good game to a great game. And I think 0 is still really good, but the leap wasn't the same.
So I could talk about Shadowrun all day. I suspect our next podcast will be very long because I have a lot to talk about.
You're going to be like, Ace Combat 5, it's great.
Ace Combat, it's pretty good. I liked it a lot.
10 out of 10,
so Shadowrun.
Masterpiece.
But the thing with Shadowrun is the one you're playing, the story is good, not great. Dragonfall, I feel, has a fantastic story. And that's why I didn't want... if I had to tell you to play one, and only one,
it'd be Dragonfall.
Play Dragonfall. But I want you to eventually try to play all of them.
I'm guessing Shadowrun Returns is a better introduction to the world as well.
It is. You start... So, it also ties in the N64 or the SNES game. There's a guy named Armitage, who in the SNES game is the guy you play. And this game, you meet him in the coroner's room. And he's one of your like buddies. It's Jake Armitage. There's it.
We probably should talk this about Shadowrun.
All right.
I know you're hyped for it.
I'll wrap it up. I'm gonna go play Shadowrun right now. Part of me wants you to play this and love it. I think you're gonna enjoy it. I don't think you're gonna hate it, but I don't think you're gonna like it.
If it's anything at all like Baldur's Gate, I'll at least like it.
I don't think you'll love it as much as me, but that's you talking about the unsung war versus the other three. That's the way I feel about Dragonfall. Dragonfall is the second one in that trilogy, and although the other ones are good, Dragonfall's story is a good, complete story that has really good stakes, really good set pieces, great characters, whereas Returns is a bit wonkier. There's characters that come in and out a little bit, and some of the parts of the story are a little bit disjointed, but they do go through Seattle and they set up extra things that happen in the world. They introduce you to the dragons a little bit better. And then Hong Kong is just weird. It's really Asian, which, even though Shadowrun is Asian...
That's right up your alley.
Well, I mean, even though Shadowrun is Asian-ish, like it's very Japanese, like mostly cyberpunks are, Shadowrun Hong Kong is Chinese, and it has to do with chi, and it has to do with another realm, and there's lots of weird shit like that. One of the characters is a rat shaman. So, there you go.
There you go. I haven't played an RPG for a while.
This one is a fun one.
Quest 64 I don't really consider an RPG because it's basically a monster killing simulator. It's a long walk down a narrow hallway. I haven't played an RPG for a while. The only RPGs I was super excited for next year, of course, Dragon Quest 3DS or Dragon Quest 8 for the 3DS. I'm gonna just demolish that when that comes out. Of course,
I've been playing that game for like 4 years. I haven't beat it.
Cosmic Star Heroine.
Jesus Christ, I can't wait.
Is the big one. I would say, and I know might be heresy, but among you and I, but I'd say Cosmic Star Heroine I'm looking forward to more than any other game next year, including Dragon Quest 8 and Nier Automata.
I would be more excited for Nier, I would assume, if I played Nier, but I didn't play all the way through it. So, I am very excited for Nier, but...
Nier's a close second.
Cosmic Star Heroine... The thing I love so much about Robert Boyd's games is they are cheeky throwbacks. It's the opposite side of the Shovel Knight coin. They are very throwback, kind of like nostalgia inspired, but by doing the nostalgia stuff, they improve it as well. So he doesn't just have classes.
I can't think of a modern JRPG developer that I'm more hyped for their release than Z-Board Games.
And and
they're American.
The only thing I could say he would improve his games with is money and time to do better animations. Like there's a part in Penny Arcade 3, where the brain in a jar, I think, falls on the ground, and it's all done through text. And I was thinking, if this guy had Square Enix money or Square Enix animators, that would have been a phenomenal scene, but it's a guy.
The gameplay is polished to the point where you're sitting there thinking, how can I play anything else? The humor is great even on repeated playthroughs. There's so much to do. I try not to, brown nose too much, but you play a game like, even his older ones like Cthulhu Saves the World, and of course the Penny Arcade episode 3 and 4, and you look at like other indie JRPG developers, and it's not even close.
I have issues with his games. Like, I don't think they're perfect, but the issues I have with his games are far outweighed by the benefits. So,
right.
Yeah.
Would that be your most anticipated game of 2017?
I can't honestly think of anything coming out next year, so I don't know.
I'm really excited for Neo.
I'm excited for Neo. I think FF14 Stormblood comes out next year.
Oh.
I'm really excited for Stormblood.
Yeah, me too.
So that's one I'm really excited for. I don't know if I'm excited for it more than Cosmic Star Heroine.
Cosmic Star Heroine you've already bought and paid for.
Yeah, well...
It doesn't have a subscription fee.
I'm getting that, but I'm also getting a wallpaper. Not wallpaper. A poster. Part of a wallpaper, I guess. But
a very small wall.
Yeah. No, I don't...
I don't even really know what's coming out next year.
I haven't been paying attention. I don't have the money.
DQ8 and... Like, Neo I'm looking forward to because as much as I love Dark Souls 3, and I think it was great, if they announced a Dark Souls 4 and it was good, I'd be like, okay, that's great. But I don't want to say the Dark Souls formula needs to evolve because it already evolved into Bloodborne. But it seems like Neo's a divergent path. Everything I've seen of it, I haven't played it. I never got a chance to play the demo because I think I was in Florida when it came out. I remember texting you telling you to beat the demo, and you were like, I'm busy with work.
Yeah, I have the beta and the alpha on my PlayStation, but I didn't beat either of them. I got a chance to sit down and play it, and I started like getting the groove of it and really enjoy it, and eventually just got caught up in like grinding and doing other stuff and exploring, and I never beat it, and I wish...
I'm always a little guilty, or I feel guilty, because after they did the Neo alpha and beta, they released a poll that was supposed to be just for people that played the demos, and they asked what you want to make with the game, like how should we tweak it, which is something more developers should do, release demos and look for feedback. And I was just like, make it harder, make it gorier, just, and I didn't even play the demo. That's just what I want.
I want more of these Souls type games, but I also want more evolutions, like you said. That if Miyazaki just forever did more and more Dark Souls content, I'd be fine with it. He always puts a lot of work and care. Obviously, my dream game for Miyazaki to make
would be a cyberpunk Dark Souls.
Yes. I feel like it just fits so well. And he was saying he was thinking about doing sci-fi or something a little bit cheerier than Kill Yourself Bleak. And
well, speaking of Kill Yourself, apparently there were rumors that he met with Kentaro Miura.
God, stop. I don't even want to think about it. My dream Miyazaki game is a Record of Lodoss war game in this Dark Souls style. That would be fucking perfect. A
Dark Souls game that I would want to see. Maybe the Heroes of Might and Magic universe. The different castles and units, I think, you could make a game out of that.
So I'm looking at a release list for next year.
Okay.
And we've got Halo Wars 2 coming out,
Nope.
which I don't know who's making that one. I like Halo Wars 1 a great deal. But Halo Wars is a game I wish had a sequel, because Halo Wars did a lot of stuff really well, and I feel like a sequel would build on it and make it actually really good.
They're going to incorporate parts of the Halo 5 and 6 canon.
Unfortunately, Halo Wars 2 does not look so hot. We have Horizon Zero Dawn, which...
I don't know what that is.
It's the Guerrilla Games game with the girl with the red hair and the bow and the mecha.
Yeah, I'm not going to play that.
I know. That game looks really cool to me. I like Guerrilla games a lot. But...
You had me a girl with red hair and mecha, but you had already lost me at Guerrilla games, and it's impossible to get me back after
the game's very tantalizing to think about the way they talk about it. But being alive for as long as I have seen many developers make videos where they're like, you can set up traps and catch these roaming groups of mecha dinosaurs.
Setting traps to me in a game is like a crafting system. It's just taking up space.
My problem is the way they talk about all these systems and stuff, they never get implemented in the way they wish. And so I don't see this game playing out the way they're trying to show it will. Because the way they always demo it, they play at a slow pace and they know the enemies are going to be there. And I don't think it's going to work like that. I am still excited to see how it works. I hope it...
What was that game that came out this year that was like super overhyped? I talk about it all the time. I forget the name of it.
No Man's Sky?
No Man's Sky.
I was going to say that I hope this isn't a No Man's Sky thing.
My favorite game of the year was No Man's Sky.
It just keeps giving.
I didn't play it, but the amount of humor and schadenfreude that I got from that is essentially limitless. From the creators' antics on Twitter to the lies they told about the game. And again, I feel bad taking joy in other people's suffering. I do. But the fact that you couldn't see this coming just blows me away. The fact that you had a game that like 5 people working on, and they're like, there's a trillion planets, and they're all unique, they're not procedurally generated. I'm like, all right, I'm going to have to stop you right there.
This is a game that I always say, I want every game, not every game, there's some that I want to crash and burn because of reasons. Like
every David Cage game.
Yes.
Get that man away from a controller.
I really want things like Nosgoth to crash and burn.
I really want DMC, Devil May Cry, to crash and burn. And
yes.
Thank God it did.
Yes. Those are things where like we dodged the bullet. Now, No Man's Sky, those are exceptions though. Normally I want just every game to be great. That would be fine. If every game was a perfect 10, great. Everybody's happy. No Man's Sky, I wanted to be great, but I saw it was not going to be great. And I thought it would land on the mediocre to lower mediocre level. I didn't think, if a game is going to suck, it needs to suck on the No Man's Sky level. Because when you just kind of suck and die, it sucks for everybody. Whereas No Man's Sky has given me more enjoyment than the people who have played No Man's Sky.
Right.
Because I've enjoyed watching this.
It's the Old Republic levels of how did this shit get released?
What? Oh, you mean the game? I thought you meant Knights of the Old Republic, and my brain was like, "What the fuck is wrong?"
The multiplayer.
I know that's
the amount of glitches and just absolute problems with that game when it came out, and the fact that people were so they rushed to defend what was obviously an unfinished, just complete mess. I think for me the final nail I called for No Man's Sky, where I started to feel really bad about laughing at the people that bought into this snake oil salesman, was when they finally found out that the planet that was demoed at E3 or GDC or whenever it was first shown off was entirely scripted, and none of it, they proved that it was entirely scripted, and none of it could ever happen in the game like it did. It was essentially they created a lie. Well, and a lot of games do that. I mean, look at the Uncharted franchise. Those games always look great in their initial trailers. And
look at the most infamous one is Killzone 2.
Yes.
Killzone 2 looks great, but you knew that was a lie when they showed the videos.
Hybrid Heaven was the same back in the day. That was a lie.
Final Fantasy 6, whenever they showed it off on the N64, when they were going to make it for the N64, they showed footage. I think it was at SIGGRAPH, and they were like, look at this. This is what this system can do. And no, it can't.
Right.
And they realized it, and they abandoned ship. It happens.
Why anyone believes any electronic product before release, I'll never understand.
The problem is, it's not even the way it looks. It's not even the fake demo. It's that people asked him about co-op and multiplayer, and he straight up said yes. Now, I know they broke silence on this stuff, which is the weirdest part. They didn't come out and like, dude, sorry, things have happened. We're a small team. We're trying, and we fucked up. We're working on it. They just said nothing. And then whenever they would say things, it was things like No Man's Sky was a mistake. Like, fuck, you guys aren't helping your case. But they came out and straight up said they would have multiplayer, and it has nothing of the sort.
So I think the biggest problem with No Man's Sky and games like that to me is I hate whenever any game is hyped up to a big deal, and I think that this game already exists and it's like a million times better. Like No Man's Sky, when I first saw that, I'm like, why not just play Freelancer 2?
It's EVE Online for casuals.
Yeah. If you want this whole spaceship thing, there's a million other things.
Is there a donation fund I can put money into to keep EVE Online going? I don't want to play it, but I want to keep reading about it.
I'm glad it exists.
Yeah, every time I read about, there's new content update where you can build giant, like, Death Star size buildings, and here's how the faction started a war.
Well, you should have bought that Dust 514 game.
What?
That first-person shooter.
Oh, that's in the EVE world too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I will gladly give, like, how much do I need to pay a year to keep this game going? Like, can we start a fund? But in return, the EVE development team needs to start writing daily reports on the clans and factions and space.
Imagine all the incredible politics, relationships, and things that have happened in online games that are lost to time because there was nobody recording them.
Well, I learned how wonderful the new generation of technology is. A lot of people who are scared about advancing technology and all this. But if you go back and you try to find footage from G4 pre-2005, it doesn't exist. 2006 G4 doesn't exist. You go back prior to YouTube and everybody having recording software, it doesn't exist anymore. And that's what I love.
Your VHS of G4 is probably worth something.
I cannot find footage of any of that online at all, which is crazy to me.
I thought that certain things in G4 would become almost like meme level. Like that soccer game with the whole, my dreams are all becoming a reality. Like, you and I were quoting that back when we were kids.
I know. You can't find that stuff anymore. And it makes me wish that I could go back in time and record that stuff. Now, even back then, I'm sure that exists somewhere. It's not like 1930s, 1920s, where London After Midnight's gone forever. We'll never, ever see London After Midnight. We'll never see Doctor Who #2. Like, it's gone. But at least nowadays, everything's recorded so much that somebody can find it somewhere. Thank God. So that No Man's Sky tangent.
Sorry.
No, I enjoy talking about No Man's Sky because it's the gift that keeps giving. My favorite game of this year, No Man's Sky.
No Man's Sky.
As seen from the outside.
I spent $0 on it, and I got more laughs than a Bill Burr show.
Not the knock on Bill Burr.
I love Bill Burr.
But
when I see people online, on the day of release for No Man's Sky saying there is no multiplayer in this game, and fanboys are saying there has to be, they told us.
It's on the box.
All I can do is laugh at you.
I appreciate what they're doing. They're doing huge content updates. They're trying to add survival stuff to the game. I hope in 5 years from now, when that team has dug themselves out of the hole they're in, that we can look at No Man's Sky and be like, this game turned out great, but at the moment it's just an awful wreck. Now I just want to talk about EVE Online, how fucking awesome. Anyways.
What else is coming out next year?
Torment. Ties of Numenera comes out in February.
I will never play an Obsidian game again.
Fool
me 50 times. Shame on me.
I really like Pillars of Eternity. I never played Planescape Torment, but that one I hope it's good. I probably won't play it, to be honest. Nier Automata in March. Ghost Recon Wildlands. They're still making those?
Is that like... I thought wouldn't Ghost Recon Wildlands just be Far Cry?
Did you see anything about Star Trek Bridge Crew?
I don't want to talk about that. I don't know anything about that, and I don't care about Star Trek.
Hold on. It's a VR game.
I was already at a 0% caring, and now you said VR, and I want to leave this room.
So, you know how... have you ever heard of Artemis?
If you would have told me it was a phone game, I'd be technically more interesting.
What about a phone VR game? Have you ever played Artemis? Or not played, but have you ever heard of Artemis?
What the
Bridge
hell is
Crusader.
Artemis?
Okay, so Artemis is a...
No, I don't care. Why are we talking about this?
Artemis is a game that you're supposed to be... Each person is part of a bridge crew, kind of like in Star Trek. So you got the person who's the weapons operator, the person who's the, navigation, and then the captain.
Black one.
The captain doesn't do anything except see the view screen and tell people what to do. I like the idea, but I was watching gameplay of it, and it's too shallow. So
a shallow VR game.
No, this isn't VR.
What is it? Just a shitty PC game?
Well, it's a multi-person PC game. Every person's supposed to have their own set up, and you pick the type.
Yeah.
So this is a game I like in concept, but from what I see, everything is not deep enough. So the level, you do not need a shield person, a generator person, a gun person, because one person can do all those jobs because they're shallow enough. If you made them if each one was a Steel Battalion console of difficulty and you've got shit to do, then I feel like that's warranting a thing.
It sounds like instead of a video game, it should be a board game.
No, because on the screen you fight another ship, but it has to be the group team effort to beat the other ship. My problem with this is it's just not deep enough. It needs to be way more complex in order to make your accomplishment running the shields feel stronger.
So the Star Trek game is just a Star Trek clone and it's going to be deeper?
I don't know, to be honest. I haven't seen anything about it. But I wanted to bring up Artemis because I thought that's a great concept for a game. I just wish it was done better.
Oh.
It's kind of like Guns of Icarus. You've seen Guns of Icarus gameplay?
I backed Guns of Icarus and never played it because my buddy's like, that game looks interesting. I'm like, Merry Christmas, here's a key.
Guns of Icarus is a game that I would play if it was deeper. It looks fun enough, and they, instead of going for depth, they give everybody kind of a general role, and then you need to repair the engine, you go up and smack the engine with your hammer,
Yeah, but what makes Guns of Icarus fun for me is watching the Team 4-star guys play it.
Well, yeah, I mean, I've enjoyed watching Guns of Icarus more than I think I would enjoy playing it.
Because it'd be like Overwatch. You get shitheads on your team. You're sitting there going, "We should have won this." But
even if I played
this guy's AFK.
If I played it with Josh and Matt and them, I think I'd enjoy something else a little bit more. But no, that's a game that if you told me that I had to sit down and play a video game with 5 of our friends.
When's the last time where you got 5 people together to play anything?
If you told me I had to sit down with 5 of my friends and I was only going to look at the view screen in front of me that is technically the captain's screen and my own weapons screen, and I had to decide where to shoot missiles, which ones to load, stuff like that, I would do it.
Artemis sounds like a game for a guy who has a 6-modder setup.
Well, it's meant for friends to get together. My thing is, Artemis is the perfect Star Trek.
It's a Star Trek game for Star Trek fans with friends.
That's
a pretty shallow.
Every time I've seen Artemis gameplay, everybody's dressed up like they're in Star Trek, and everybody's acting, and that's my problem. You shouldn't have to put on any artifice for this game to be fun.
Right.
It should be a fun role to do your small, insignificant job in that room well enough that you feel like you impacted the battle. But from what I've seen, it seems shallow enough you don't get that feeling. So I wish it was better. Just want to bring it up. Anyways, I don't know if that game needs to be in VR. I feel like the fun of that game would be better to actually see it in person. VR.
I don't think any game needs to be in VR.
Putting you in an actual bridge and seeing it in VR kind of removes the fun of seeing your own screen.
I saw people talk about that VR game called Eagle Flight, where it's a VR game where you're an
you
eagle.
Fly around.
And people talk about how it's so intense they cry and they dream about how they can't wait to experience it again because they feel like they're flying. And I know I'm a cynical bastard, but there's no way in hell that is that good.
I want to remind you that people tried to sue James Cameron over Avatar.
Because they wanted to see it.
Yeah.
They wanted it to be real.
So, just, yeah. Danganronpa comes out on PS4. I want to play those games. I probably never will. Oh! The Switch is supposed to come out in March.
Did I have a second?
I don't know how to feel. Also,
a Nintendo Portable where the games are $60. Sign me right up.
Yeah, I hope that system's good. I don't like to see the Wii U and the 3DS killed so fast. Although the Wii U was pretty much dead already.
The Wii U peaked with Wonderful 101.
South Park, Fractured But Whole.
Nope. Next.
Outlast.
That's Obsidian.
Outlast 2.
I don't know what Outlast 1 is.
It's a type of horror game that I don't like. People like it. Oh shit, Siberia 3? That's coming back.
It's making a comeback.
It's an action, or is it not an action game? It's just a point-and-click adventure.
I know what Siberia is.
Let's see here. There's a lot of names that I don't recognize, like Black the Fall, Friday the 13th. Looks pretty cool. I don't know if you saw anything about that.
Is it just like Dead by Daylight, but licensed?
Pretty much. There's better stuff to it. Like, there's some things to it that I think are better than Dead by Daylight. That's a PC game. The Division's DLC comes out. I didn't know they were still helping that. Shadow Warrior 2 comes out on consoles.
I hear Shadow Warrior 2 is actually pretty good and a lot better than the first one.
Mm-hmm. I've heard that. I haven't played it. I like the first one, but...
I was talking to some guy about recent FPSs, because my mind with first-person shooters is like stuck like 5 years ago. Like, when people say, what's a good recent first-person shooter, I think, Red Orchestra. And I just have like 2008, 2009 one stuck in my brain. But some guy said, if you like first-person shooters like I do, Shadow Warrior 2 is what you're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
Personally hoping for the next Serious Sam game to come out soon.
There is, Strafe sounds familiar. What the fuck is that? Tekken 7 comes out. I'm excited for that. Really excited for that.
Yes, you are.
Mass Effect Andromeda.
Nope.
I was excited for Mass Effect Andromeda, and then I found out there's at the center of this world is an ancient evil. Get the fuck.
Can't put
Persona 5 comes.
That's trademarked.
Persona 5 comes out in April.
Oh. Does it really actually come out?
Yeah, I hope so.
Persona 5, wasn't that supposed to come out winter 2014?
Ukulele comes out.
I will play Ukulele.
DQ Heroes 2.
Only because I love... I'll be playing DQ Heroes 2.
Silver Case comes out, but I don't really give a shit about Silver Case. Sonic Mania comes out in spring. Tokiden looks kind of neat. Cuphead is supposed to come out mid-2017.
Cuphead's one of those games where it's like, that looks great. It can't possibly be that great.
Mm-hmm. Valkyria Revolution. I saw a little bit of footage of it. It looked neat. Hello Neighbor, which everybody's been talking about.
What is that, like a Tim Allen game?
No. It's... I want to say horror-ish. The YouTubers do it.
Oh.
Berserk comes out. Yakuza Kiwami comes out. Wipeout Collection comes out. Which I'm excited for.
Why are you mentioning games that I know I won't play?
Warhammer 40k Inquisitor comes out. MVCI comes out. Scalebound's supposed to come out.
Scalebound. If that is on PC day one, I'll pick it up.
Sea of Thieves, which is another game that looks good in concept. It's going to be terrible in reality.
I know nothing about it.
They showed it at E3. It's a pirate game where pretty much it's sort of like an open sandbox, small-scale MMO. But it's a game I want. I don't want it to be done like that. I want it to be done better, more complex.
Do we even have one good pirate game besides, like, Sid Meier's Pirates?
Is Sid Meier's Pirates good?
I think so.
I was going to buy it because I really want a game like that. And I almost bought...
I don't know if it's good.
I almost bought Total War Empire or Napoleon or whatever because it has really cool, like, boat stuff. And after watching Gabby play so much Black Flag...
Assassin's Creed, yeah.
I played a little bit of Black Flag just playing the boat parts. And fuck, it's great. Christ. Detroit Become Human.
I was at the David Cage game.
Kill me. It's his Cyberpunk David Cage game.
There you go.
Fuck. Monster Boy and the Cursed Kingdom?
I knew about this. I told you about it.
What?
They're making another one.
What?
Hopefully it's good.
I hope so. That was one of the best worst nights of my life. Crash Bandicoot Insane Trilogy. I wish my grandma was still alive. She would like that. I don't know what the fuck Frostpunk is, but it sounds cool. Nier Automata comes out on the PC in the middle of the...
Frostpunk is a style, whereas something like Cyberpunk has a lot of like sunglasses, dusters, like that kind of stuff, and Steampunk's more like old-timey stuff.
It's all snow.
Frostpunk is white girls and Uggs and yoga pants and the Starbucks.
I thought you were doing a thing.
No, that's what it really is.
Are you joking?
No, I'm fucking making that up.
Okay. When you say that, my brain goes, wait, is it like snow shit? Because I love snow shit. The only reason I played as much Skyrim as I did, which was only like 10 hours, is because of the fucking snow shit.
Is Frozen your soundtrack of the year, every year?
I did start listening to Frozen soundtrack again.
Hey, I got tickets to go see Frozen soundtrack.
Mountain Blade 2 Bannerlord. Lawbreakers. That looks... People keep talking about it, and I'm like, can we not?
I used to follow Cliff Blazinski on Twitter, and he would talk about Lawbreakers. And I don't know anyone outside of the people working on that game that are actually hyped for it. I know a lot of people from my first-person shooter days, and people are kind of just... They don't care.
So there's Dreadnought, which is a game I'm really excited for. Because a lot of these games, like Free Space and stuff, you play as smaller ships.
And Dreadnought, you're a bigger ship.
Dreadnought, you're supposed to be like a big ship. I don't care if the game is slower and more boring. I want the excitement of turning a giant ship in space and dealing with small scale. I want faster than light, but I want it to be bigger. I want it to be like Battlefleet Gothic Armada, but I want it to be, I want more complexity in these games. I don't want them to be as dumb. Now, I say that, but I played Stellaris and didn't like it because of the complexity.
We need another Infinite Space. Get on it, Platinum.
No, I'm really excited for that. I don't think it's going to be as good as a lot of people do.
We need more games that walk the line between arcadey and simulation. What I mean by that is, when you think of a flying game, you think of either super hyper realistic like Microsoft Flight Simulator, or you think of arcadey like Afterburner. And a good game that walks the line, of course, is the Ace Combat series. And there's also like helicopter games, like what is it called? Like Rising Thunder or Rolling Thunder, whatever it is, where you play as a helicopter, and that's like a side-scrolling shooter or whatever. And you have like actual helicopter sims, and just like in real life, the rotors have to go for 10 real-life minutes before you're ready to take off, because that's how helicopters work.
All right, you're talking about Urban Strike or Jungle Strike,
sure,
or Fireblade. Rising Thunder is the fighting game.
No, I think that's Rolling Thunder.
Rolling Thunder is Dudley. Rising Thunder.
I thought they took the name for the fighting game from Dudley. Or don't they want to be sued?
I think it's close, but I don't think it's identical.
Are you looking that up right now?
I am looking it up right now. Because
Are there any other games coming out in 2017 that are a big deal? No?
Shovel Knight.
2?
The Spectre thing.
No, that already came out.
It's called Rising Thunder.
No, it's called League of Legends fighting game.
Well, I just know here it says Shovel Knight, Spectre of Torment, PC, PS4, Xbox One. So.
Okay.
Guardians of the Galaxy Telltale series.
Oh.
Nidhogg 2, which looks like garbage.
What the fuck is a Nidhogg?
Nidhogg number 1 is like a almost Atari looking game, but it's a really fun, like competitive. It's fencing. I can't believe you haven't heard of this. I've seen this game. It's like Atari looking fencing, but It's really fun, simple gameplay that's really quick. The whole point is to get to one side of the screen, and so you got to fight the other dude in order to defend your side of the screen, or you got to fight to the other side of the screen. You can fist fight, you can throw your sword, you can grapple. Anyways, Final Fantasy XII: The Zodiac Age, which I will play that again. It's my least favorite, but I'll play it again. Did I ever say Guardians of the Galaxy?
Telltale? Yeah, which I will not play, despite my love for the Guardians of the Galaxy.
Red Dead Redemption 2.
Which I hope they've changed the name by then.
I don't think...
That's coming out in a year?
Yeah, less than a year. I hope it's good. I would like Gabby to play the original. I think she'd like it a lot, because she likes Westerns.
Yeah, she'd also like the snow area.
Tokyo 42? What the fuck is that? Last of Us Part 2, Death Stranding. Yeah, right.
Death Stranding's coming out next
Fucking
year.
Death Stranding's on this list.
They haven't even started on the gameplay yet, I'm betting.
Fuck.
Did you see the Gaming Brit video on
I did not.
Death Stranding? I'll watch it after this. It's pretty good.
I saw it existed and I didn't watch it. Phantom Dust Remaster. That's an Xbox One exclusive. That's finally coming out. That's your favorite belts and zipper game.
I might buy an Xbox One just to play Phantom Dust Remastered. Fuck Scalebound.
I've
Kamiya, you lost the match.
I've been waiting on a game that's like, you gotta get an Xbox to play this. Halo wasn't that. Killer Instinct's on the PC. Scalebound's on the PC.
If you got an Xbox One, would you play Killer Instinct more often?
No. I have it on the PC. I like it a lot. It's just...
I missed you from a few years ago, and you were like, man, I wish I made another Guilty Gear.
I miss me from years ago whenever I played fighting games more. I don't have the time. Or the drive. I'm just getting too old.
Remember when I was in Hawaii and I was happy?
Were you?
Yeah, because it was before Dark Souls 2 came out.
Prey. It's coming out.
That came out like 10 years ago.
DQ11 comes out in Japan.
DQ11 confirmed for turn-based battles. Like classic turn-based. DQ11 is basically like the real next Dragon Quest. So like Dragon Quest 1, 2, 3, 4. Dragon Quest 1, 2, 3, and 4 were all on the NES. And they're very NES-y RPGs. 5 and 6 were on the Famicom, I want to say. Or sorry, the Super Famicom, I want to say. And then 7, of course, was PS1. And then 8 was PS2. And 8, Dragon Quest 8, I mean, I'm not sure it's the best one, but it's just this really... They took all the bloat from Dragon Quest 7 and hyper-condensed it into this just really... It's still a long game, as you know. You've been on the final boss for like a decade now, and you just can't pull the trigger.
I'm in the last 3 hours of that game, and I'm just not...
Dragon Quest 8 is an amazing game, but then they came out with Dragon Quest 9, but it was only for the DS, and it wasn't great. I think most people agree Dragon Quest 9 is one of the worst of the series. It's still a good game.
It's alright. There's nothing iconic about it.
Then 10 came out and was an MMO. So Dragon Quest 11 is like the first real Dragon Quest game since the PS2 era.
Mm.
And it'll never come to America.
Dragon Quest is a game series that I love deeply, even though I've not played any of it, except 8. System Shock Remake comes out next year.
Why would anyone...
Sorry, not yet next year. These are delayed from 2017 to 2018.
Why would anyone play the System Shock Remake? Play the original.
Have you played the original System Shock?
But that's the charm.
It's nearly unplayable. It's really, really not good. I shouldn't say nearly unplayable. It's not fun to play.
Because otherwise you're that guy from Blizzard that said Warcraft 1 isn't fun.
He said Warcraft 1 and 2 aren't fun. No, the problem with that game is the same problem that is with Ultima Underworld and stuff like that. I'm glad that a remake is coming out.
The Darkspire.
It could use a remake. I could still play System Shock 1 because I have a strong penchant for bullshit in my video games, and I'm not bothered by games that aren't up to date. But
but I can play older games too. Just you have a better bullshit tolerance than me.
You run into something that's shitty, and you're like, well, there's a lot to see in this life. I'm not going to waste it here.
I was thinking earlier when you were talking about puzzles and how you felt a little bit gypped when I said there were puzzles in Hybrid Heaven and there actually weren't. I'm like, you and I have a very different definition of puzzles. To me, if I'm playing a game and there's a roadblock and I can't get past it by killing it, that's a puzzle.
You're the sovereign citizen of video games.
Exactly.
You get to a wall that requires you to press a button, you go, am I being detained? Yakuza 6 is supposed to come out in 2018. That got delayed. MechWarrior 5 got delayed, and Bloodstained got delayed from next year.
I'm okay with that.
Bloodstained, I'm really excited for. It looks really good. It's not a game that I want now. I don't care when it comes out.
Castlevania is one of those series that I really, really love, but I never find anyone to talk to about, or have anything to say about it.
The worst thing about Liam leaving the Best Friend cast is he was like the only one defending Castlevania being called Metroidvania. Because when people said Axiom Verge was a Metroidvania game, and he got really pissed off about it, which is good because I got pissed off about it. It's not a Metroidvania game. It's a Metroid game. Metroidvania is a specific type of Metroid game. It's got RPG shit. It's got collectibles. It's got a bunch of backtracking and going places to places. Axiom Verge is not an RPG. It's just like Metroid. It's a Metroid type game. Fuck you. Anyways, also it's either Matt or Liam that enjoyed the old Castlevania games more than the new ones and wish we went back to the old style. And we ever since Iga made Symphony of the Night, we've never gone back. And I want more Rondo of Blood. I want more Castlevania 1. And one of those two, I don't remember which, liked that style more. And now they're both gone.
I see a lot of people hating on the post Symphony of the Night era of Castlevania. I want to go back to the classic Vania, as it's called. And so I feel obligated to defend Metroidvania, that era. But the majority of those games I do not like. I love Portrait of Ruin. Yeah. Harmony of Dissonance and Circle of the Moon are my favorite Castlevania games, bar none. Symphony of the Night's great. I don't think anyone would ever deny that. But games like Order of Ecclesia, the Sorrow games, I can't stand them. They're Metroidvania done wrong.
I like the Metroidvania games a lot. But we have not gotten a Metroidvania game since Rondo of Blood. Which was ever since we started with... We got Castlevania Adventure Remastered, which was...
For the Wii.
Yeah, Rebirth, which was basically a remake of an older one. We got Castlevania Dracula X Chronicles, which was great on the PSP. That's got tons of content.
Castlevania is one of those things that we're going to need a new...
Well, Konami is on fire, and Iga left, so Iga's the only one who's going to do that. We're never going to get the Castlevania.
Well, I was thinking... This is kind of bad, actually. But you think, like Capcom hasn't made a Mega Man game since before Marvel vs. Capcom 3 came out in, 2010?
Since the GameCube.
Yeah. They haven't made a Mega Man game since the GameCube. And Mega Man X Command Mission, which was a shitty JRPG.
Well, they did Mega Man 9 and 10. I forgot about those.
Yeah, but they don't really count. And so, basically Mega Man's been dead for a long time, and so everyone's hoping that someone new would come along and pick up the torch. That torch was clumsily handled to Mighty Number 9, who then proceeded to take a dump on the torch.
Well, I mean, that's... Mighty Number 9 is the sacrifice we needed to realize.
You can't be so eager to bring the series back, you just pass it off to the... You can't pass the mantle to the first guy that shows up. It'd be like if Superman was getting old, and...
well, see, that's...
And, Deku from Boku no Hero Academia showed up, he's like, I'll be Superman. He's like,
and he's just like,
go ahead,
fine,
kid.
I'm done. Well, I mean, that's the problem, though. They didn't just give it to any random person. They gave it to the father of Mega Man, or so people say.
They gave it to the guy who helped design the art for Mega Man, not the guy that created the game.
But everybody hails him as the hero, the father of Mega Man.
And yeah, Hideki Kamiya said it perfectly. He's a businessman first and an artist second.
And
he took everybody's Mighty Number 9 money, and he spent it all on his own company.
I'm glad that game crashed and burned as hard as it did. And I say this because I don't give a shit about Mighty Number 9. If Mighty Number 9 came out or didn't, I wouldn't affect my life in the least. But I'm glad that game burnt so that a game I care about in the future doesn't suffer the same fate.
Right.
I mean, somebody had to be that martyr.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I mean, giving Bloodstained the Castlevania type game to Iga is fitting because he is Mr. Castlevania or Mr. Metroidvania.
Right.
But I mean,
For
unless
Classicvania, I mean, you would almost consider Shovel Knight.
Yeah, there is
classic.
nobody left who will do that unless it's like Way Forward or Yacht Club, who could do a 2D side-scrolling, no RPG, straight-up game. As much as I love Rondo of Blood, and it's my favorite, I've played Castlevania 1 the most. I feel like Castlevania 1 is the best made out of all of those games. But I don't
feel like Castlevania Chronicles is a downgrade, or
Castlevania. Oh, you mean the PS1 remake? Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's all right. It's not a bad game, but it's a downgrade. Things are done differently. The scale of Simon is bigger compared to the way he was on screen, and all that stuff matters.
You and I agree on a lot of things, but we disagree on some things. I prefer Super Castlevania 4. I think it's retarded that a man with a whip can't whip in more than just one direction. That's just how I feel. I played Castlevania as a kid. I would probably never play Castlevania again, ever, because it's not enjoyable to me. I feel like a lot of difficulty comes from I don't like the jump arc. I don't like a lack of a double jump. I don't like committing to jumps. I don't really enjoy Castlevania 1 at all. I didn't really like the series as a kid until Super Castlevania 4 came around, and I was like, this is what I want. I understand why Castlevania 1's so well designed, and I honestly don't care because I don't have fun playing it.
I every now and then I'll just stop and like play Castlevania 1 over and over and over until I beat it. It's a game that I don't think we'll really ever get again, unfortunately. Nobody will sit and take that time to think about like every aspect of what makes a game good. Unfortunately, a lot of the stuff that's put into games now is they think, well, let's just put it in the game because of reasons. I mean, that Ego Raptor went over it with his Castlevania 4 thing, but that's the thing is, in that game, they added things, and instead of adding things and then retooling the entire game to include those things, they just tacked them on, and that's how it feels. There's always ways in which you can reuse gameplay mechanics in different ways, reuse them in order to change the game up, and they don't ever quite nail it the way that the original Castlevania does. So yeah, next year, I guess out of all the stuff I named, Tekken 7 is the one I'm thinking of now. I forgot Tekken 7 comes out on consoles.
Because no one, if you would have asked us last year, we never would have said that the majority of our time this year would have spent playing Overwatch. Because when we didn't know what the hell Overwatch was.
Well, it was a Blizzard game, so I didn't give a shit.
Yeah, we didn't care about Blizzard games, and we still don't.
You go back to like 2004 Blizzard, like the vanilla WoW Blizzard, and I will care. Even then they did shitty things, but I still cared about what they did. And for the last decade, Blizzard has been this slide of we do something decent and then we piss you off twice as much. We release Diablo 3, but then we add a money-grubbing auction house. We give you...
I'm going to go check on my phone.
We give you StarCraft 2, but then we give you... what was it? The shitty way that they split the story up. And Wings of Liberty's decent, but the next two are train wrecks in story. And the multiplayer's all right, but people are still playing the original game. So I didn't think Overwatch was anything to even bat an eyelash at. I thought it was going to be awful, and I thought, forget it. But no, it turned out to be great. I still play it. I don't know. As much as I love it and just enjoy it, there's not that spark in my brain that goes off anymore. So
I don't think about playing it ever. It's not something I think about. It's just something I throw on to kill time.
There's minor problems in the game that do kind of amplify themselves over time.
If you text me, hey, I just got off work, I'll swing by, pick you up, I have enough time to get in a match of Overwatch before you get here.
And that's one thing I really loved about it is I could play right before work. I have a half hour before work. I can't do anything, but I can play Overwatch.
You can't sit down and play half of Undead Burg or...
Yeah, there's really not much I could do, but I wanted to play Overwatch.
You can't even get into Street Fighter, because by the time you're warmed up, you gotta leave.
Yeah.
And you're sitting at work thinking about the laggy bison that took 100 points from you, and when you ran it back, you only got 30 points, and you're like, why do I play this fucking game?
I know it speeds along. It never gives you a chance to stop and think, yeah, I should turn it off. It is like, oh, you thought about quitting the game? Nope, you're already in another game, loser. And you're
There's times where I've wanted to stop playing, and I lost connection to the match at, like, in the post-game lobby. Like, they're like, not enough players finding a new one. And before I can think, oh, it backed me out for me, it's found a new game and I'm back in it. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to leave in the middle of a match because then I get penalized, so see you later.
Yeah. I guess we can wrap it up. I'll do a little voice recording for, like, thanks for listening to the year-end podcast review.
Well, I wanted to do this bit to kind of pad out the shit from yesterday.
Yeah, I might add it in. I might add in and just be like, Josh has left us, so here's the rest of the thing.
Just don't explain who he is.
Is that the hot one?
I'm not going to say that on a podcast.
That's a yes.
Anyway, I can't have this story on the podcast, I guess.